Blood stained the hospital sheets as another cramp seized my body. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. I'm sorry, Mrs. Winters. There's no heartbeat. Your body is already beginning to miscarry. 12 weeks. I'd made it 12 weeks before my baby's heart stopped beating. My husband David held my hand as my body went through the cruel process of letting go. We'd tried for 3 years to conceive, gone through 2 rounds of IVF, and this pregnancy had felt like our miracle. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. Through tears, I saw a text from my mother-in-law. Patricia Winters. Cleaned out your tacky jewelry. The house looks better already. Attached were photos of empty jewelry boxes and my mother's mahogany chest, the one she'd brought from India when she married my father, sitting by the trash bins outside our house. David, I whispered, showing him the phone. His face went white. She didn't. Tell me she didn't touch your mother's collection. But the photos confirmed it. Every piece was gone. The emerald set my mother wore to state dinners, the pearl necklace from her wedding, the Cartier bangles my father had given her for each of their anniversaries. All of it. Dismissed as tacky by a woman who thought costume jewelry from department stores was the height of elegance. Call her, I managed between contractions. Now. David stepped into the hallway, and I could hear his raised voice through the door. Meanwhile, I texted our housekeeper, Murray, who'd worked for my family for 20 years. Murray, did Mrs. Winters take jewelry from the house? Oh, Mrs. Isabella. I tried to stop her. She came with a moving truck, said she was helping you declutter. She took everything from your mother's room. I called Mr. David but couldn't reach him. I'm so sorry. The next contraction hit hard, and I cried out, not just from physical pain but from the realization that while I was losing my child, Patricia was erasing the last tangible pieces of my mother. David returned, his face grim. She took everything to Hartman's auction house. Says she's doing us a favor, getting rid of immigrant junk before the baby arrives. His voice cracked. She doesn't know about the miscarriage. I finished. We'd planned to tell her after the first trimester. Now, there was nothing to tell. Dr. Martinez entered to check on me. Mrs. Winters, you're progressing, but it could be several more hours. Is there anything I can do to make you more comfortable? Can you recommend a good lawyer? I asked, deadly serious. She blinked in surprise, then noticed my tear-stained face staring at the phone. Family troubles during loss are unfortunately common. Focus on your health first. Everything else can wait. But I couldn't wait. Those pieces weren't just jewelry, they were my mother's legacy. She'd been the daughter of Indian diplomats, married my American father when he was a young Foreign Service officer, and spent 30 years as an ambassador's wife, collecting meaningful pieces from every posting. David, go to Hartman's. Stop the sale. Bella, I should stay with you. Go, I insisted. Those pieces are all I have left of her. Please. He kissed my forehead and left, alone except for the nurses who checked on me periodically. I labored through the physical process of loss while scrolling through photos of my mother wearing those tacky pieces. There she was at a state dinner in Delhi, wearing the ruby set that had been in her family for generations. Another photo showed her in Vienna, my father fastening the Cartier necklace he'd bought her for their 20th anniversary, the emeralds gleaming at a White House reception. Each piece told a story, held a memory. Patricia had never understood. To her, jewelry was about showing off, about making sure everyone knew how much her husband spent. She couldn't fathom that some pieces held value beyond their price tags, that they were threads connecting me to my heritage, my parents' love story, my identity. My phone rang. David sounded breathless. I'm at Hartman's. You're not going to believe this. When I told them who you were, the entire atmosphere changed. The owner himself came out. What do you mean, Bella? He recognized your mother's collection immediately. Apparently, several pieces were featured in a Sotheby's catalog about important diplomatic jewelry. He wants to know if we're really selling the Ambassador Rao's collection. Despite everything, I almost smiled. My mother would have loved that, being remembered not as Mrs. Winters, but as Ambassador Rao, the first Indian woman to serve as ambassador to Austria. Is Patricia there? Oh yes, she's having what can only be described as a meltdown. When Mr. Hartman started authenticating pieces, he asked her how she acquired them. She said they were family pieces she inherited. He asked which family, since he knew for a fact that the ruby set belonged to the Rao family of Jaipur. A contraction hit, and I breathed through it before responding. What happened then? She tried to bluff, said she was Priya Rao's daughter. That's when Hartman pulled out his phone and showed her a photo from last year's embassy reunion. You were wearing the emerald set, standing next to the current ambassador. He recognized you immediately. David, I need those pieces back. Already handled. Hartman refused to accept them once he realized they were stolen. He's actually calling the police. Bella, some of these pieces. He's estimating the collection at over $2 million. The Cartier pieces alone are worth a fortune. $2 million. Patricia had thrown $2 million worth of jewelry in garbage bags and hauled them to an auction house while calling them tacky immigrant junk. There's more, David continued. Hartman wants to know if you're Ambassador Rao's daughter, the one who wrote the book about diplomatic families. He has a first edition. His daughter used it for her thesis on multicultural identity in foreign service families. I closed my eyes, remembering the hours I'd spent writing that book, my mother by my side, sharing stories and experiences. Patricia had called it navel-gazing nonsense when it was published. Tell him yes, and David? Thank him for protecting my mother's legacy. He's actually insulted on your behalf. He keeps muttering about people who can't recognize genuine artistry, and Cartier would roll over in his grave. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia, who constantly bragged about her connections and breeding, had just been exposed as a thief and a fraud to one of the city's most prestigious auction houses. The hospital room door opened, and Dr. Martinez returned. How are we doing? Getting there, I said. Then to David, I have to go. Don't let Patricia leave with anything. The police just arrived. I'll handle it. The next few hours blurred together. The physical process of miscarriage is cruel in its ordinariness, your body going through motions it thinks are normal while your heart breaks with each cramp. The nurses were kind, bringing me ice chips and adjusting my position, but nothing could ease the dual loss I was experiencing. By evening, it was over, my baby was gone, and I lay in an exhausted haze while they cleaned up and prepared to move me to a recovery room. That's when David returned, looking haggard. How are you? He asked, taking my hand. Empty, I admitted. How's the jewelry situation? He pulled a chair close to my bed. Your mother's collection is safe. Everything has been returned to our house, and Marie is cataloging it all. But Bella, there's something else. What? Patricia didn't just take your mother's jewelry. She also took pieces from the safe, your engagement ring upgrade I was planning to surprise you with for our anniversary, the cufflinks my grandfather left me, and about $10,000 in cash we kept for emergencies. I stared at him. She robbed us. While I was losing our baby, your mother robbed us. The police want to press charges. Grand theft, given the value. Mr. Hartman is willing to testify about her attempting to sell stolen goods. And, he hesitated. What? This isn't her first time. Hartman made some calls. She's tried to sell items at 3 other auction houses in the past year. Each time, she's been turned away because she couldn't prove provenance. One was a painting that belonged to my aunt before she died. Another was silverware from my grandmother's estate that was supposed to go to my cousin Sarah. The pattern became clear. Patricia had been stealing from family members for years, targeting items she thought wouldn't be missed or whose owners couldn't fight back. But she'd made a fatal error with my mother's collection. She'd assumed that because my mother was Indian, her jewelry must be costume pieces, not understanding that diplomatic families often accumulated significant collections through decades of international postings. What do you want to do? David asked. I thought about Patricia's text, sent while I was miscarrying. The casual cruelty of cleaned out your tacky jewelry. The dismissal of my heritage as something that made the house look worse. The entitlement of entering our home while we were at the hospital and taking what she pleased. Press charges, I said firmly. All of them. David nodded. I agree. I've already told her she's no longer welcome in our home. When she tried to play the "but I'm your mother" card, I reminded her that mothers don't steal from their children while they're in the hospital. A knock on the door interrupted us. A woman in a business suit entered, looking apologetic. Mrs. Winters? I'm Detective Sarah Palmer. I'm so sorry to intrude during this difficult time, but I need to ask you some questions about the theft. Please, come in. Detective Palmer was efficient but compassionate. She took my statement, documented the photos Patricia had sent, and showed me pictures from Hartman's of my mother's collection spread across their authentication table. Mrs. Winters, the auction house estimates the total value at $2.3 million. That makes this a significant felony. Your mother-in-law is currently in custody. She's arrested? David looked shocked. She became combative when we tried to question her, threw a paperweight at Mr. Hartman and accused him of being part of an immigrant conspiracy to frame her. We had no choice. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time that day. The image of Patricia, always so concerned with appearances, being arrested in Hartman's auction house while ranting about conspiracies was absurdly satisfying. Detective Palmer continued. We've also connected her to several other thefts. It seems she's been funding her lifestyle by stealing from family members. Your case is just the most valuable and well documented. After she left, David and I sat in silence. The room felt heavy with loss, our baby, the illusion of his mother as a difficult but ultimately harmless woman, the family unity we'd tried so hard to maintain. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "About the baby, about my mother, about all of it. The baby isn't anyone's fault," I said. "But your mother, how did we not see this? Because we wanted to believe the best. Because she always had excuses. Because we were too busy with our own lives to notice the pattern." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo from Mr. Hartman of my mother's emerald set, beautifully lit and arranged. "Mrs. Winters, I wanted you to see that your mother's collection is safe. These pieces deserve to be treasured, not just for their monetary value but for their cultural and historical significance. If you ever consider donating any pieces for exhibition, please let me know. And my deepest condolences on your loss, both of them." He'd signed it with his personal number and a postscript. "Your mother-in-law claimed these were cheap Indian knockoffs. I take great pleasure in informing you that the Cartier pieces alone are insured for $800,000. The next morning, I was released from the hospital. David drove me home in silence, both of us dreading what we'd find, but Marie had worked magic. The house was spotless, and my mother's jewelry was arranged in the library, each piece carefully placed on velvet displays she'd borrowed from a local jeweler. "Oh, Marie," I breathed, tears starting again. "Your mother would be so proud," she said, hugging me gently. "You protected her legacy even while going through such pain." The legal proceedings moved quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence and multiple victims coming forward, Patricia pled guilty to avoid a trial. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. The family imploded. David's siblings, discovering their own missing items, turned against Patricia completely. His father, finally free from her influence, filed for divorce and revealed that she'd been stealing from him for years too, selling his family heirlooms and gaslighting him when he couldn't find them. "She told me I was getting senile," he confided during one visit. "Made me believe I was losing my mind when I couldn't find my father's watch or my mother's china. Turns out she'd sold them all." The story made the society pages. Diplomat's daughter exposes $1 million theft ring. Patricia's mugshot accompanied articles about how she'd tried to fence historical jewelry while her daughter-in-law miscarried. The scandal destroyed her social standing, the one thing she'd valued above all else. 6 months later, David and I attended an exhibition at the Diplomatic Museum. I'd loaned them several pieces from my mother's collection for a display about women in diplomacy. Standing before the display case, seeing my mother's jewelry alongside her portrait and biography, I felt a sense of peace. "She would have loved this," David said, wrapping an arm around me. "She would have," I agreed, "especially the part where Patricia's in federal prison." He chuckled. "Mom always said Patricia was a small-minded woman. Turns out she was also a criminal." The museum director approached us. "Mrs. Winters, the response to your mother's pieces has been extraordinary. We've had requests from 3 universities to include them in research about diplomatic gift-giving traditions. Would you consider writing a companion piece to your book?" I touched my still flat stomach, where we'd just confirmed a new pregnancy was growing. This baby wouldn't replace the one we'd lost, but it represented hope, continuity, a future. "Yes," I said, "I think my mother's story deserves to be told in full." That night, I sat in my library surrounded by my mother's jewelry, writing the first chapter of what would become Gems of Diplomacy, a daughter's memoir. Each piece sparked a memory, a story, a lesson my mother had taught me about bridging cultures with grace and dignity. Patricia had called them tacky immigrant junk, but they were so much more. They were symbols of a life lived across continents, of love that transcended borders, of a woman who'd represented her adopted country while never forgetting her roots. And now they were mine to protect, to cherish, and eventually to pass on to my own daughter, who would arrive healthy and perfect 7 months later. We named her Priya, after my mother, and on her first birthday, I fastened a tiny gold bangle around her wrist, the same one my mother had worn as a baby in Jaipur, the one Patricia had thrown in a garbage bag, the one that connected my daughter to generations of strong women who knew their worth couldn't be measured in dollars or social standing. Patricia serves her time in minimum security, writing letters no one answers. The woman who'd spent her life obsessed with appearances is now known as the mother-in-law who robbed her miscarrying daughter-in-law. No amount of social climbing can overcome that fall. And somewhere, I like to think my mother is laughing at the beautiful irony of it all, her tacky jewelry exposing the real trash in our family.
Absolutely not. Maxwell Porter, CEO of Porter Tech Solutions, didn't even look up from his phone as he dismissed 6 months of my work. My carefully prepared presentation still glowed on the conference room screen, showing colorful mock-ups of an app that could revolutionize how people manage their mental health. But the market research shows. I started. Olivia, he cut me off, finally glancing up. We're a business software company. We make accounting programs and inventory management systems. We don't do consumer apps, especially not some. He waved his hand dismissively. Therapy thing. I gripped my laptop tighter, fighting to keep my voice steady. The mental health app market is projected to reach $3.9 billion by next year. This could open up an entirely new revenue stream for Porter Tech. And what do you know about revenue streams? Maxwell's smile was cold. You're a junior developer. You've been here what, 2 years? 3 years, I corrected, and I've contributed to every major project since. Actually, he interrupted again. That's something we need to discuss. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Send in Helen from HR. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I'd heard it last month when they laid off half the QA team. Helen Barnes bustled in, carrying a folder and wearing her practiced HR smile. The one that never quite reached her eyes. Olivia, she said warmly, as if she hadn't just been summoned to help destroy my career. Please sit down. I remained standing. What's this about? Maxwell leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking almost pleased. In light of recent budget constraints and your, let's call it unauthorized use of company time to develop this app idea, we're making some changes to your role. Helen opened her folder. We're offering you a position as front desk receptionist. Same benefits, though naturally there will be an adjustment to your compensation. The rest of her words faded into background noise as I processed what was happening. They were demoting me, from software developer to receptionist, because I dared to pitch an idea outside their narrow vision. This is ridiculous, I managed. I'm a developer. I have a master's in computer science from MIT. Then you should be more than qualified to handle the booking system, Maxwell smirked. The alternative, of course, is termination. Your choice. I thought about my apartment rent, my student loans, the current tech job market. I couldn't afford to be unemployed, not now. When do I start? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Monday, Helen said brightly. I'll email you the new job description. We'll need your developer credentials and access cards by end of day. That evening, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and self-pity. My laptop screen showed the app mockups I'd spent months perfecting. Mindspace, a revolutionary platform combining AI-driven therapy tools with peer support networks and professional resources. I'd gotten the idea after watching my best friend Kate struggle to find affordable therapy during the pandemic. The existing apps were clunky, impersonal, or prohibitively expensive. I knew I could build something better. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Kate, I'm going to kill him, she declared when I told her what happened. Actually murder him, with his own pretentious Italian leather shoes. I managed a weak laugh. Pretty sure that won't help my career prospects. Neither will letting them demote you to receptionist. You're brilliant, Liv. Your app idea is brilliant. Don't let them. I need the job, Kate. I sighed, looking at my sad bank balance. At least for now. She was quiet for a moment. So what are you going to do? I stared at my laptop screen, at the mock-ups that had gotten me into this mess. Then I noticed something. The Porter Tech VPN was still connected, my developer access still active. They wouldn't disable it until tomorrow. I'm going to build it anyway, I said slowly, an idea forming. Build what? The app? Yes. I sat up straighter, energy returning. They think putting me at the front desk will shut me up. Fine. I'll use their Wi-Fi, their electricity, their coffee. I'll build Mindspace right under their noses. Liv? Kate sounded worried. Is that legal? As long as I use my own equipment and don't touch any company code. Perfectly legal. They can't stop me from working on personal projects during downtime. But can you really build an entire app by yourself while working reception? I thought about the coding workshops I've been running for local high school girls, teaching them the basics of app development. About Maria, the brightest student I'd ever mentored, who was now studying computer science because I showed her it was possible. I won't be doing it alone, I replied. I know exactly who to call. The next morning, before heading to Porter Tech to turn in my developer credentials, I made 3 important calls. First, to Maria. How'd you like to get some real-world development experience? Then to my college roommate Jen, now a UX designer in Seattle. Remember that app idea I told you about? I'm doing it. You in? Finally to my cousin David, a lawyer specializing in tech startups. I need to make sure everything I'm about to do is completely legal. By Monday morning, when I took my place behind the reception desk at Porter Tech, I had a plan. My personal laptop was loaded with development tools. I had a secure cloud repository set up under a different email, and I had a team of talented people ready to work remotely. Maxwell walked past without acknowledging me, probably expecting to see me broken and defeated. Instead, I smiled pleasantly and answered the phone. Porter Tech Solutions, how may I direct your call? Between calls, I opened my laptop and began to code. The front desk turned out to be the perfect cover. No one pays attention to the receptionist. Executives would have entire conversations right in front of me about market trends, user acquisition strategies, app monetization, all valuable intelligence for my own project. I learned more about running a successful tech company in my first week as a receptionist than I had in 3 years as a developer. Maria proved to be an invaluable partner, her fresh perspective helping us avoid the bloat that plagued most corporate apps. We coded in the evenings over video chat, her enthusiasm reminding me why I fell in love with programming in the first place. Jen's design work was extraordinary, making the interface both beautiful and intuitive. She understood exactly what we were trying to achieve, an app that felt like talking to a supportive friend rather than a cold digital tool. The work wasn't easy. I answered phones and greeted visitors all day, then coded late into the night. My apartment became a command center of sticky notes and energy drink cans. I survived on cheap coffee and determination. But slowly, mind space began to take shape. 1 month into my demotion, I overheard Maxwell talking to the head of marketing about their struggling attempts to reach younger users. I made notes and adjusted our strategy accordingly. 2 months in, a board member complained about the company's outdated UI design. I sent screenshots to Jen, who incorporated the latest design trends into our app. 3 months in, I had a working prototype. The AI algorithms were learning, the peer support network was functioning, and our first round of beta testers, recruited carefully from outside the tech industry, were providing valuable feedback. I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was more than revenge now. This was about creating something that could genuinely help people. Then came the day that almost ruined everything. I was deep in code, fixing a bug in the notification system, when a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up to find Helen from HR, wearing that same practiced smile. "Olivia, what are you working on?" I kept my face neutral, thanking every deity I could think of that my screen was angled away from her. "Just organizing my personal emails during lunch break." She nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Remember, all computer use must be related to your reception duties." Of course, I smiled back. "I'll get right back to the visitor log." That night, I called an emergency team meeting. "We need to be more careful," I told Maria and Jen over video chat. "And we need to move faster. The longer this takes, the more chances they have to shut us down." "The core features are almost ready," Maria reported. "We could launch with those and add the advanced stuff later." Jen shared her screen, showing our latest analytics. Beta user engagement is off the charts. People love it, live. They're already asking when they can share it with friends. I took a deep breath, looking at the progress we'd made. We were so close. We couldn't fail now. "Okay," I decided. "Let's set a launch date, 1 month from today." As I ended the call, a notification popped up on my screen, an email from the App Store review team. Our initial submission had been approved. Mindspace was ready for release whenever we gave the word. I glanced at my Porter Tech employee badge at the photo taken 3 years ago when I still believed in the company's mission. In 1 month, everything would change. I just had to keep my cover for a little longer. With 1 month until launch, everything that could go wrong did. First, Porter Tech installed new monitoring software on their Wi-Fi network. I discovered this when Gary from it stopped by the front desk, wearing his usual friendly smile. "Just updating security protocols," he said, typing commands into his tablet. "Too many employees using company resources for personal projects." My heart nearly stopped. Had they discovered Mindspace? But Gary just winked at me. "Though I'm sure you're not doing anything like that, right, Olivia?" I forced a laugh, mind racing. I'd need to route all development traffic through a secure VPN now. More carefully, more slowly. Time we didn't have. That evening, during our team video call, Maria had more bad news. There's a bug in the peer support matching algorithm, she reported, sharing her screen to show lines of problematic code. It's not properly filtering inappropriate content. If we launch like this, we'd be putting vulnerable users at risk. I finished, rubbing my tired eyes. How long to fix it? At least 2 weeks of dedicated work. 2 weeks we didn't have. But we couldn't launch with broken safety features. Mindspace was meant to help people, not harm them. Then Jen spoke up, her voice hesitant. There's something else. A new mental health app just launched, called MindMender. She sent us the link. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through their website. The interface was different, but the core concept was eerily similar to Mindspace. How is this possible? Maria asked. Did someone leak our idea? I thought back to all the conversations I'd overheard at the front desk, all the executives who'd walked past while I was coding. No, I said slowly. But Porter Tech's offices are full of people who saw my presentation. The next day, I paid closer attention to office gossip. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. Maxwell Porter's nephew had just launched a startup, a mental health app startup. They hadn't just rejected my idea. They'd stolen it. During lunch break, I did some digging. MindMender had raised $2 million in seed funding. Their launch was being covered by major tech blogs. And their founder, James Porter, was being hailed as a visionary entrepreneur. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called David my lawyer cousin. Can they do this? I demanded. Just steal my idea. Ideas aren't copyrightable, he reminded me gently, unless you can prove they use your actual code or designs. Which I can't, because they just took the concept. I slumped in my chair. So what do I do? Build something better, he said simply. You've been working on this for months. You understand the problem deeper than someone who just copied an idea. Use that. He was right. MindMender was sleek but superficial. Their AI responses were generic. Their peer support system was basically just a chat room. They'd built what they thought people wanted, not what people actually needed. That night, I gathered the team. Change of plans, I announced. We're not rushing to launch anymore. We're going to take the time to do this right. We spent the next week refining every feature. Maria rebuilt the matching algorithm from scratch, making it smarter and safer. Jen redesigned the interface to be more intuitive, more human. I worked through lunches, stayed late after my reception shift, coded through weekends. My apartment became a cave of coffee cups and takeout containers. Kate started dropping off actual meals, worried I'd get scurvy. You need to take care of yourself, she insisted. Isn't that what your app is all about? She had a point, so I started using Mindspace myself, testing each feature as we built it. The AI therapy tools helped me manage stress. The peer support network connected me with others building startups while working day jobs. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Watching MindMender succeed stopped feeling like failure. Instead, it clarified our mission. We weren't just building an app anymore. We were building a community, but corporate espionage wasn't done with us yet. One morning, about 2 weeks before our new launch date, I arrived at work to find someone had been through my desk. Nothing was obviously missing, but things were slightly out of place. My laptop's position had shifted by a few inches. I checked the security footage from my phone's hidden camera, installed after Helen's warning visit. At 3 a.m., a figure had entered the lobby using an executive key card. They'd spent 20 minutes going through my desk drawers. The image was grainy, but I recognized the way they moved. James Porter, the MindMender founder, Maxwell's precious nephew. They were getting nervous. That night, I moved all our code to a new repository, changed every password, and activated two-factor authentication on everything. Then I did something risky. I left my work laptop in my desk drawer, with a special surprise installed. Sure enough, the next night, James returned. This time, my hidden camera caught him copying files from my laptop onto a USB drive. What he didn't know was that the files were decoys. Fragments of code that looked like Mindspace but wouldn't actually work. And buried in those fragments was a digital signature, proof that he tried to steal our work. Insurance, just in case. But we still had bigger problems. The deadline was approaching, And our budget was running dangerously low. We'd been funding everything ourselves, my savings, Jen's freelance work, Maria's tutoring money. Then came the investor call that changed everything. I was manning the front desk, trying to fix a bug in our notification system, when a woman walked in. Early 50s, sharp suit, the kind of confident presence that made everyone else in the room sit straighter. "I have an appointment with Maxwell Porter," she announced. I checked the calendar. Dr. Sarah Chen. "From Horizon Ventures?" She nodded, and I felt my heart skip. Horizon Ventures was one of the biggest players in health tech investment. As I called up to Maxwell's office, I noticed Dr. Chen glancing at my laptop screen. I quickly minimized my code window, but not before she raised an eyebrow. "Interesting architecture," she commented. "Building something." Before I could respond, Maxwell burst out of the elevator, all smiles and handshakes. "Sarah, wonderful to see you. Let me tell you about some exciting opportunities." They disappeared into the conference room, but not before Dr. Chen gave me a final, thoughtful look. That afternoon, after they finished their meeting, Dr. Chen stopped by my desk. "That looked like a therapy application you were working on," she said quietly, "with some unique security implementations I haven't seen before." I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "Would you like to see more?" For the next 15 minutes, I showed her Mindspace, the learning algorithms, the sophisticated content filtering, the peer support network that matched users based on shared experiences rather than generic categories. "This is impressive," she said finally, "especially for someone working from a reception desk." She handed me her card. "Call my office tomorrow. Let's talk properly." That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called Horizon Ventures from my lunch break. Dr. Chen didn't waste time with small talk. "Your app solves problems I didn't see addressed in your competitor's product. Problems that tell me you actually understand this market." "You mean my mender?" I tried to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Ah," she paused. "You know about that situation." "Situation. James Porter has been pitching us for additional funding, but his numbers aren't good. User retention is abysmal. Turns out copying an idea isn't the same as understanding it." My heart raced. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to discuss investment, real investment in a team that knows what they're doing." I gripped the phone tighter. "Even though I'm just a receptionist?" She laughed. "Honey, I started my first company from my car while working as a parking attendant. I know potential when I see it." The meeting was set for the following week, but first we had a major problem to solve. That evening during our team call, I broke the news. "We can't take investment while I'm still working here. It's a conflict of interest, possibly even a legal issue." "So quit," Maria said, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "And risk them coming after us legally, claiming I'd developed it on company time?" "Actually," Jen interrupted, "I have an idea about that." Her plan was audacious, risky, and absolutely perfect. "It's going to take perfect timing," I warned. Maria grinned. "When has that ever stopped us?" We spent the next week preparing everything. Every detail had to be perfect, because we weren't just launching an app anymore. We were setting a trap. And Maxwell Porter was about to walk right into it. The morning everything changed started like any other at Porter Tech's front desk. I answered calls, greeted visitors, and secretly checked our app's pre-launch metrics. Mindspace was ready. Our code was perfect, our security was ironclad, and our small army of beta testers was eager to spread the word. But timing would be everything. At exactly 9:15 a.m., right on schedule, James Porter stormed through the lobby, heading straight for his uncle's office. He didn't even glance at me, the invisible receptionist who had outsmarted him at every turn. I sent a quick text to Maria. "Showtime." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with notifications. MindMender's App Store rating was plummeting. Hundreds of one-star reviews appeared within minutes, all with the same complaint. The app had crashed, deleting user data and exposing private messages. The bug we'd hidden in the code James stole was working perfectly. I could hear shouting from Maxwell's office. Through the glass walls, I saw James gesturing frantically at his laptop while Maxwell turned redder by the minute. At 9:30, Helen from HR hurried past my desk. A stack of papers clutched to her chest. She didn't notice that her security badge had slipped slightly, its reflection perfectly captured by my phone's camera. Another piece of evidence documented. At 9:45, Dr. Chen arrived for our scheduled meeting. I told her 10 o'clock, but as expected, she was early. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Quite a morning for mental health apps, she remarked casually, glancing at her phone. Have you seen what's happening with MindMender? I might have heard something, I reply, keeping my voice neutral. Would you like some coffee while you wait? She smiled knowingly. No need. I think the show's about to start. Right on cue, Maxwell's office door burst open. He stormed toward the elevator, James trailing behind him. We have to shut it down, James was saying. The whole platform is compromised. Shut it? Maxwell sputtered. Do you know how much we've invested in this? The press release goes out in an hour. Actually, Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the lobby. I believe that press release needs some revision. Maxwell froze. Sarah? What are you doing here? Supporting innovation, she said smoothly. Real innovation, not stolen ideas packaged as original work. James went pale. I don't know what you're. Save it, Dr. Chen cut him off. We have proof that MindMender's code was copied from another project. A project that was, ironically, developed right here in your building. She gestured to my desk, where my laptop screen now displayed MindSpace's interface, nearly identical to MindMender's, but with a creation date months earlier. Maxwell's face went from red to white. Olivia? I stood up, smoothing my receptionist's blazer. Surprise. The next few minutes were chaos. Maxwell shouted about betrayal and threatened lawsuits. James tried to delete files from his phone, not realizing we'd already documented everything. Helen emerged from HR, clutching termination papers that would never be filed. Through it all, Dr. Chen watched with quiet amusement. Finally, when Maxwell paused for breath, I spoke. Before you threaten any more lawsuits, I said calmly, you should know that everything, from my original pitch to James stealing my code, has been documented, including some interesting financial transactions between Porter Tech and MindMender that the SEC might want to examine. Maxwell's jaw clenched. What do you want? Simple. You're going to publicly acknowledge that MindMender was based on stolen intellectual property. You're going to shut it down. And you're going to stay out of my way while I launch the real thing. Or what? Dr. Chen stepped forward. Or Horizon Ventures will be very interested in discussing these documents with our friends at the Justice Department. The silence that followed was deafening. Then something unexpected happened. From the elevator, a slow clap began. Standing there was Gary from it, grinning broadly. I wondered how long it would take him to figure it out, he said, walking over. By the way, boss, you should know that Olivia's been running her development through a private VPN. Never touch the company network. Totally legal. I checked. Maxwell looked like he might explode. You knew about this. Knew about it? I helped secure it. See, some of us actually care about innovation. Gary turned to me. Need a job. My startup could use a developer with your skills. Before Maxwell could respond, his phone chimed. Then mine. Then everyone's phones in the lobby. Breaking tech news. MindSpace launches. Revolutionary mental health app takes App Store by storm. Maria and Jen had pushed the launch button right on schedule. I turned my laptop around, showing the rapidly climbing download numbers. Oh, and you might want to check MindSpace's investor list. Dr. Chen isn't the only one who believes in original ideas. The names scrolled past: major venture capital firms, tech industry leaders, mental health professionals. We'd spent weeks quietly building support, preparing for this moment. Maxwell sank into a lobby chair, defeated. James was frantically texting, probably trying to salvage his reputation. Helen had disappeared back to HR, likely updating her resume. Dr. Chen touched my arm. Ready for that meeting now. I looked around the lobby one last time, at the desk where I'd spent 6 months coding in secret, at the security cameras that had documented everything, at the Wi-Fi router that had carried my app from idea to reality. Actually, I smiled. I have a better idea. Let's meet at my new office. I hear there's a tech startup looking to sublease Porter Tech's old space. 2 months later, I sat in what used to be Maxwell's office, now headquarters of MindSpace Technologies. Our app had passed 5 million downloads. Major healthcare providers were licensing our platform. And most importantly, we were actually helping people. Maria had joined full-time as our lead developer after graduating early. Jen had moved from Seattle to head our design team. Even Gary had jumped ship from Porter Tech, bringing his security expertise to protect our growing user base. Kate stopped by regularly, proud that her struggle had inspired something meaningful. "Just promise me one thing," she said during one visit. "Never get so successful that you forget why you built this." I pointed to the front desk visible through my office window. It was empty now, but I kept it as a reminder. "That's why the desk stays," I told her. "To remember that great ideas can come from anywhere, even from someone everyone else ignored." Porter Tech's stock had taken a hit after the Mindmender scandal. Maxwell stepped down as CEO, though the press release called it a planned retirement. James had disappeared to some startup incubator in Singapore. But I didn't care about revenge anymore. We were too busy building something that mattered. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Chen. Our latest funding round had closed. The numbers made my head spin. As I looked out over the city skyline, the same view Maxwell used to enjoy, I opened MinSpace on my phone. Our mission statement shimmered on the screen. Everyone deserves to be heard. I thought about all the nights coding in secret, all the carefully laid plans, all the people who believed in us when we were nothing but an idea and some borrowed Wi-Fi. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so amazing that they're forced to watch from the sidelines, knowing they could have been part of it. My desk phone lit up, our new receptionist letting me know my next appointment had arrived. A young developer with an idea she wanted to pitch. "Send her in," I said, clearing my schedule. After all, you never know where the next great idea might come from, even if it comes from someone sitting at the front desk, quietly changing the world.
I still remember the exact moment I decided to throw away my perfect life. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was staring at spreadsheets in my corner office at Goldman Sachs, my untouched dinner growing cold beside me. Another overpriced salad from the place downstairs. The same place I'd eaten at for the past 5 years. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Big news. Opening our 15th location next month. When will you finally join the family business? Time to stop playing with numbers and learn about real success." I looked at the photo he'd attached. Him and my brother Anthony standing proudly in front of their newest Taste of Naples restaurant location. The same posed shot, the same forced smiles, the same mediocre Italian food that had somehow built my family's restaurant empire. Instead of responding, I took a bite of my cold salad and grimaced. Even bad Italian food would be better than this. My name is Sophia Russo, and I was living every Italian-American family's dream. Senior investment banker at Goldman Sachs at 28, making 7 figures a year, with a corner office overlooking Manhattan. My father should have been proud. Instead, all he saw was that I wasn't part of Russo Restaurants, the chain of Italian restaurants that had been our family's pride for 3 generations. "Banking is for people who can't create anything real," he'd say at every family dinner. "Anyone can move money around. It takes real skill to build a restaurant empire." What he never understood was that I did know about food. Real food, not the mass-produced pasta and sauce that made our family rich. Every vacation day I had, I spent traveling, eating at tiny local restaurants, learning about authentic cuisine. My apartment was filled with cookbooks, not finance textbooks, and every night I dreamed about cooking, not banking. But you don't walk away from Goldman Sachs, and you definitely don't walk away from it to start a food truck. At least, that's what everyone told me. That night, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the cold salad, maybe it was my father's text, or maybe it was just time. I opened my laptop and started writing my resignation letter. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office before the markets opened. "You're what?" Jake stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Sophia, you're on track for partner. 2 more years tops. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. I'm opening a food truck. He started laughing, then stopped when he saw my face. You're serious? You want to leave Goldman Sachs to sell hot dogs? Not hot dogs, real Italian food. The kind my grandmother used to make before my father turned our family recipes into frozen pasta sauce. Jake leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. Look, if this is about money, it's not about money. I cut him off. It's about creating something real. As I walked out of his office, my phone started buzzing. News travels fast on Wall Street, and by the time I reached my apartment, my father was already calling. Have you lost your mind? His voice boomed through the speaker. I just got a call from Arthur Goldman himself. A food truck? You're throwing your life away. I let him rant, walking into my kitchen where my grandmother's handwritten recipe book sat on the counter. I'd spent years collecting her recipes, testing them in secret, perfecting them while my family thought I was working late at the office. Are you even listening to me? My father demanded. Yes, Papa, I hear you. But for once, I need you to hear me. I opened the recipe book to her signature dish, pasta alla nonna, made with a sauce that took 3 days to prepare. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm choosing my own path. By becoming a street vendor? Your brother runs 5 restaurants by himself. We have 15 locations. We're opening 3 more this year. That's success. No, that's mass production. When was the last time you actually cooked anything, Papa? When was the last time you made Nana's recipes the way she taught us? Silence. Then, times change. You can't make money cooking 1 pot of sauce at a time. Watch me. I hung up and opened my laptop. 5 years at Goldman had taught me more than just finance. I knew how to plan, how to analyze markets, how to build something from nothing. I'd helped launch million-dollar companies with less planning than I was putting into my food truck. First step, I emptied my savings account. $200,000, enough to buy a top-of-the-line food truck and have operating capital for a year. Next, I pulled up the business plan I'd been working on in secret for months. Nana's Kitchen. Authentic Italian street food, made fresh daily, using recipes that hadn't been changed for mass production. My phone kept ringing. My brother Anthony, my mother, my aunts and uncles. Everyone had an opinion about my mental breakdown. I ignored them all and started making calls of my own. By sunset, I'd found the perfect truck, a barely used kitchen on wheels that I could customize. By midnight, I'd secured all the necessary permits and licenses, and by dawn, I'd mapped out every food truck location in Manhattan, analyzing foot traffic patterns, lunch crowds, and competition. 1 week later, I stood in front of my shiny new food truck, now painted in deep red with Nana's Kitchen written in gold script. Inside was a fully equipped kitchen, better than what most restaurants had. My grandmother's recipe book sat on the counter, ready to guide me. You're really doing this? I turned to find my mother standing there, looking worried. She was holding a container of what smelled like my father's mass-produced marinara sauce. I thought you might need this, she said, holding out the container. For emergencies. I shook my head. No emergencies, Mama. Only real food. I opened my grandmother's recipe book. Remember how Nana used to spend 3 days making her sauce? How the whole house would smell like basil and garlic? That was before we had 15 restaurants to run. She sighed. Safia, your father built an empire by taking Nana's recipes and turning them into fast food. I started preparing for my first day, laying out fresh ingredients I had bought at dawn from local markets. He built what he wanted. Now it's my turn. She left without another word, taking her container of sauce with her. I watched her walk away, then turned back to my preparations. My first customers would be arriving in 2 hours. I'd love to say my first day was a tremendous success, that people lined up around the block for my authentic Italian food. The reality? I served exactly 12 customers, made $157, and had enough leftover food to feed an army. But those 12 customers, they came back the next day, and they told their friends. By the end of the first week, I had a small but loyal following. Office workers who were tired of the same chain restaurant lunches. Food enthusiasts who appreciated real Italian cuisine. People who could taste the difference between sauce that took 3 days to make and sauce that came from a factory. My father kept tabs on me through others, never visiting himself, but always asking about my little experiment. My brother Anthony drove by once, smirking when he saw me working alone in my truck. "Have fun playing chef," he called out. "When you're ready to admit this was a mistake, your office at Russo Restaurants is waiting." I ignored them all and focused on my food. Every morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. to start preparing. Every ingredient was fresh, every dish made to order. My customers didn't just get food. They got stories about the recipes, about my grandmother, about real Italian cooking. 3 months in, something unexpected happened. A food blogger discovered me. Her review went viral. "Forget everything you know about Italian food trucks. Forget everything you know about Italian restaurants. Nana's Kitchen is serving the most authentic Italian food in New York, and they're doing it from a truck." The next day, the line stretched around the block. I sold out by 1 p.m. Then came the write-up in the New York Times food section. Then Eater. Then Bon Appetit. Suddenly, my little experiment wasn't so little anymore. I needed help. I hired 2 assistants, then 4. I added a second truck, then a third, each one serving the same authentic recipes, made fresh every day. 1 year after leaving Goldman Sachs, I had a fleet of 5 trucks and a central kitchen where we prepared our sauces and fresh pasta. My revenue was approaching $2 million annually, small compared to Russo Restaurants, but every dollar earned without compromising quality. I was working harder than I ever had at Goldman, putting in 16-hour days, but for the first time in my life, I was creating something real, something that would have made my grandmother proud. Then came the day that changed everything. I was working in one of my trucks when I overheard 2 customers talking about Russo Restaurants, about how the quality had gone down, about how the newest locations were struggling, about rumors of financial troubles. That night, I did what any good investment banker would do. I started digging. What I found confirmed the rumors. Russo Restaurants was expanding too fast, taking on too much debt. Their mass-produced approach was failing as customers demanded better quality. Their once mighty empire was crumbling. My father didn't know it yet, but his dream of 15 locations was about to become a nightmare. And I had a decision to make. I could watch my family's legacy crumble, or I could save it, on my terms. What I did next would change not just my family's restaurant empire, but the entire way we thought about food, family, and success. But first, I had a sauce to prepare. After all, the best revenge, like the best sauce, takes time to develop. And I had all the time in the world. The numbers didn't lie. Russo Restaurants was in serious trouble. Sitting in my small office above our central kitchen, Surrounded by the aroma of slowly simmering sauce, I reviewed the financial reports I'd gathered. The empire my father had built was drowning in debt, bleeding customers, and running out of time. 5 new locations opened in the past year, each one performing worse than the last. Food costs skyrocketing because of their bulk buying contracts, customer satisfaction scores plummeting, and worst of all, a $50 million loan coming due in 6 months that they couldn't possibly pay. My phone buzzed. A text from Anthony. "Hey sis, how's the food truck life? Still playing chef?" I looked at the expansion plans spread across my desk, not just plans for more trucks, but for something bigger. Something that would change everything. Actually, I typed back, "I'm thinking about expanding. Want to get coffee?" We met at a small Italian cafe, not one of our family's restaurants. Anthony showed up in his designer suit, reeking of expensive cologne and desperation. He didn't know I could smell the fear on him. "So," he smirked, stirring his cappuccino, finally ready to admit this food truck thing was a phase. "Your office is still empty." I took a sip of my espresso, properly made, unlike the automated machines in his restaurants. Actually, I want to talk about Russo restaurants. Specifically, about the Bronx location's 42% drop in revenue last quarter. His cup clattered against the saucer. "How did you? Or the 3 health code violations at the Brooklyn location? Or maybe the $50 million loan that's coming due?" I pulled out a folder. "I may have left Wall Street, Anthony, but I didn't forget how to read financial statements." "You've been spying on us?" "Public records, brother. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look." I leaned forward. "You're in trouble. Big trouble." He deflated slightly, his arrogance cracking. "Papa says we can handle it. We just need to cut costs, maybe close a few locations. You need $50 million in 6 months, and your credit is maxed out. Cost cutting won't save you." I opened the folder, sliding over a proposal I'd spent weeks preparing. "But I can." "You?" He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "With what?" "Food truck money. With Nana's legacy fund." His laughter stopped. "Never heard of it." "You wouldn't have. I created it 3 months ago, using my Goldman Sachs connections. It's a private investment firm specializing in restaurant turnarounds." I watched his face as understanding slowly dawned. "We have $2 billion in capital, and we're very interested in authentic Italian restaurants." Anthony's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the proposal. $2 billion. That's impossible. You've been running food trucks. I've been running food trucks, making connections, and building a reputation for quality food. Meanwhile, I've also been raising capital, analyzing failing restaurants, and preparing for this moment. I pulled out another document. "This is a preliminary offer. We'll assume the debt, inject fresh capital, and restructure operations. Papa will never agree. He'd rather go bankrupt than give up control. Then you go bankrupt, and we'll buy the assets at auction." I stood up, leaving the documents on the table. "You have 48 hours to discuss this with him. After that, we start buying up your debt on the secondary market. And trust me, Goldman Sachs remembers me very well." I left him sitting there, staring at the numbers that spelled the end of his world, or the beginning of a new one. That evening, my mother showed up at my central kitchen. I was in the middle of teaching new staff how to properly make Nana's sauce, just as she had taught me years ago. "Your brother told us," she said quietly, watching me stir the sauce, "about your investment firm, about the offer." I added a pinch of fresh basil to the pot. "And your father is?" upset. Of course he is. His daughter who threw her life away now has the power to save or destroy his legacy. I handed her a spoon. Taste. She dipped the spoon in the sauce, and for a moment, I saw tears in her eyes. It tastes just like Mama used to make. That's because I make it exactly the way she taught us. Before Papa decided it was too expensive, too time-consuming to do it right, I turned down the heat, letting the sauce simmer. Every truck, every batch, every single day. We do it right. He's not a bad man, Sophia. He just wanted to build something big. I know, Mama, but he built it by sacrificing what made our food special. I wiped my hands on my apron. Now I'm offering to help him fix it. But it has to be my way. She nodded slowly. He wants to meet. Tomorrow night at the original restaurant. The original Russo restaurant, where it all began 40 years ago. Now a tired location in Little Italy, its once bright sign faded, its tables half empty most nights. I hadn't been there since leaving Goldman Sachs. Walking in the next evening felt like stepping back in time. The same red checkered tablecloths, the same pictures of Italy on the walls, the same menu that hadn't changed in decades. But now I could see what customers saw. A relic, not a destination. My father sat in his usual corner booth, an empty plate of pasta in front of him. He didn't stand when I approached. Investment firms. He spat the words like they tasted bad. Billions of dollars. This is how you respect our family's heritage. I slid into the booth across from him. I respect our heritage by making food the way Nana taught us. When was the last time you tasted your own sauce, Papa? Really tasted it. He pushed the plate away. We serve thousands of people every day. You can't make sauce 3 days at a time for that many people. Actually, you can. My central kitchen does it every day. Smaller batches, better ingredients, real cooking. I pulled out my proposal, and we can do it for all your restaurants. But things have to change. Change. You want to destroy everything I built. No, I want to save it. But not just the restaurants. I want to save what made us special. I opened my grandmother's recipe book, which I'd brought with me. Remember this? Remember how people used to line up around the block just to taste Nana's cooking? His eyes softened slightly at the sight of his mother's handwriting. That was different. Times were simpler. People still want real food, Papa. They're tired of mass-produced meals and artificial flavors. Look at my trucks. Lines every day, selling out by lunch. And we charge more than your restaurants because people will pay for quality. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the recipe book. The loan, he finally said, comes due in 6 months. You've tried every bank in the city. No one will refinance. I laid out the numbers. You're losing money on every new location. Food costs are up 60% because your suppliers know you can't negotiate. And your best customers are finding better options. Like food trucks, he asked bitterly. Like anywhere that still cares about quality. I pushed the proposal closer. I can save Russo restaurants. Keep the name, keep the legacy, but return to what made us great. Real Italian food, cooked with care. And I suppose you'll want to run everything. Yes. No point sugarcoating it. My firm will have controlling interest. You'll retain a significant stake, but operational decisions will be mine. He stood up abruptly, his face flushed. Never. I'll find another way. There is no other way, Papa. You have 6 months until the loan comes due. 5 months until suppliers start demanding cash on delivery. 4 months until you have to start closing locations. I stood too, matching his stance. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm offering you a choice. A choice? He laughed harshly. Between selling my life's work to my ungrateful daughter or going bankrupt? No. A choice between admitting you need help or watching everything you built get sold off piece by piece. I gathered my things. You have until Monday to decide. After that, we start buying your debt. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving him standing there among the empty tables and faded memories. Outside, one of my food trucks was parked nearby, the evening shift, serving dinner to a long line of customers. The next few days were silent. No calls from my father. No texts from Anthony. But I knew they were running the numbers. Realizing what I already knew, they had no choice. On Monday morning, my phone rang. The board wants to meet, Anthony said, his voice tight, to discuss your proposal. The meeting was set for Wednesday at their corporate headquarters, a fancy office building that had seemed so impressive when I was young. Now it just looked like another monument to prioritizing size over substance. I arrived early, dressed in chef's whites instead of a business suit. Let them see who I really was, not who they wanted me to be. The boardroom was full. My father, Anthony, the other executives who had helped build and nearly destroy our family's legacy. They all watched as I set up my presentation. But first, I had servers bring in lunch, dishes from my food trucks, made fresh that morning. Before we discuss numbers, I said, I want you to taste something. The sauce was made exactly how Nana taught us. 3 days, fresh ingredients, no shortcuts. They ate in silence. I saw the recognition in their eyes, the memory of what our food used to taste like before mass production and cost-cutting destroyed it. My father put down his fork, wiped his mouth, and looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before: respect. Now, I said, pulling up the first slide of my presentation, let's talk about how we save Russo restaurants. What happened next would change not just our family's business, but the entire way America thought about Italian food. But that's not where the story ends. Because sometimes saving something means completely rebuilding it. And I was just getting started. The transformation of Russo restaurants began at 4 a.m. on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after the board meeting. I stood in the kitchen of our original location, surrounded by my best food truck chefs and a very skeptical kitchen staff. Today, I announced, holding up my grandmother's recipe book, we learned to cook again. The executive chef, who'd been running this kitchen for 20 years, crossed his arms. We know how to cook. No, I corrected him gently. You know how to heat up pre-made sauce and boil factory pasta. Today you learn to make real Italian food. Over the next 12 hours, we made sauce the way Nana had taught me. Fresh tomatoes, not canned. Herbs picked that morning. Slow cooked, stirred by hand, tasted every hour. The kitchen staff watched, skeptical at first, then increasingly interested as the aroma filled the air. By dinner service, we had 1 batch of real sauce ready. I made an announcement to the dining room. Tonight, we're offering a special, pasta alla nonna, made from my grandmother's original recipe. Same price as our regular pasta, but limited quantity. We sold out in 2 hours. The next day, the line stretched around the block. But this was just one restaurant. We had 14 others to fix and a mountain of debt to deal with. My father, surprisingly, became my strongest ally. After that first night, after seeing customers' reactions to real food, something changed in him. He started coming to the kitchen early, watching us cook, even rolling up his sleeves to help. I had forgotten, he admitted one morning, stirring a pot of sauce. How it used to be. How Mama did it. Anthony was a harder sell. This is inefficient, he complained during a management meeting. We're spending 3 times as much on ingredients, 5 times as much on labor, and charging twice as much per dish. I cut in, sliding over the latest numbers. With full dining rooms and lines out the door. The transformation wasn't easy. We closed 3 underperforming locations, converted 2 others into training centers. I brought in my food truck teams to train restaurant staff, teaching them not just recipes, but the philosophy behind real Italian cooking. Every location got a complete makeover. Out went the checkered tablecloths and cheap wine glasses. In came elegant simplicity, open kitchens where customers could watch their food being made, wine lists curated by actual sommeliers. But the biggest change was in our central kitchen, or rather, its elimination. No more mass production. I announced 6 months into the transformation. Each restaurant makes its own sauce, its own pasta, its own everything. Fresh, daily, no shortcuts. The food critics noticed. The first review came from the New York Times. Russo Restaurants has undergone a miraculous transformation. What was once a chain of mediocre Italian restaurants has become a collection of authentic trattorias, each offering food that would make any Italian grandmother proud. Michelin stars followed. First one restaurant, then another. Our prices went up, but customers didn't complain. They were getting real food, cooked with care and passion. 1 year after taking control, we had fewer locations, but triple the revenue. The debt was paid off. Our suppliers were happy, and our staff turnover had dropped to nearly 0. Turns out people like working in kitchens that actually cook. But the real moment of triumph came during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. For the first time in years, the whole family was gathered around the table. My mother had cooked, really cooked, not just heated up pre-made food. I have something to show you, my father said after dinner. He led me to his study, where a new frame hung on the wall next to his business awards. Inside was a food truck permit, my original one, from when I first started. I was wrong, he said quietly, about everything, about you. I hugged him, smelling the familiar scent of garlic and basil that now clung to his clothes just like it had clung to Nana's. We were both right, Papa. You built something big. I just helped make it good again. 2 years after the takeover, Russo Restaurants had become Russo and Daughter, my condition for the final rebranding. We had 10 locations, each one unique, each one excellent. The waiting list for dinner reservations was months long. My food trucks? Still running, still popular. I kept them as our research and development kitchens, testing new recipes, training new chefs, keeping us connected to the streets where real food culture lags. Anthony finally came around when he realized that quality meant both better profits and more respect in the food world. He now runs our chef training program, teaching new cooks the difference between making food and making memories. Last month, a young chef from our newest location asked me why we spend so much time and money doing things the hard way. I took her into the kitchen, showed her how to stir the sauce, just like Nana taught me. Feel that? I asked as she stirred. That's not just sauce. That's tradition. That's family. That's love. She nodded, understanding, filling her eyes as the aroma of slowly simmered tomatoes and fresh herbs surrounded us. Later that evening, I found my father in the same kitchen, teaching another young chef how to make pasta by hand. His sleeves were rolled up, flour dusting his once immaculate suit. "You know," he said when he saw me, "I spent 30 years trying to make this business bigger. You spent 2 years making it better." I picked up a handful of flour, felt its texture, just like Nana taught me. "Why not both?" He smiled, really smiled, the way he used to when I was little and helped him in the kitchen. Why not both indeed? We're expanding again, but differently this time. Each new location has to earn its right to exist by maintaining our standards. No shortcuts, no compromises, no mass production. Every sauce made fresh, every pasta rolled by hand, every dish cooked with pride. The investment firm that started it all. Still going strong, still transforming restaurants, still proving that quality and profit can coexist. But that's not what I'm most proud of. Last week, I found my grandmother's recipe book in the kitchen of our original location. It was open to her sauce recipe, the pages stained with tomato and oil, the way a well-used cookbook should be. But it wasn't just her handwriting anymore. There were notes in the margins from our chefs, little tweaks and observations, the recipe evolving while staying true to its roots. That's when I knew we'd succeeded, not because of the awards or the profits or the waiting lists, but because we'd created something my grandmother would have been proud of. My father joined me in the kitchen that evening, putting on an apron like he does every day now. "Ready to make the sauce?" he asked. I smiled, reaching for the tomatoes. "Always, Papa, always." The food trucks still park outside our restaurant sometimes, a reminder of where this revolution started. And every morning, when I smell the sauce starting to simmer, I think about that scared girl who left Wall Street with a dream of doing food right. Turns out you can go home again. You just have to be willing to cook up some changes along the way. Last night, a food critic asked me if I ever regret leaving Wall Street. I led her into our kitchen, showed her the sauce bubbling in huge pots, the pasta being rolled by hand, the chefs working with pride and passion. "Banking taught me about numbers," I told her. "But this taught me about value. And those are very different things." She took another bite of her pasta, closed her eyes in bliss, and nodded. She understood. Because in the end, success isn't just about how much money you make. It's about staying true to what matters. In my case, good food and family legacy. Sometimes those things seem to conflict, but with enough determination, and maybe a food truck or two, you can find a way to make them work together. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some sauce to stir. After all, the best traditions are the ones you practice every day. And somewhere, I know, Nana is smiling. I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. Even as a little girl, while other kids played with dolls and toy cars, I was fascinated by my father's medical textbooks. Dad was a general practitioner in our small Connecticut town, and Mom ran his office. They had big dreams for me, just not the ones I chose. "Sophia," my mother would say, smoothing her perfectly pressed skirt, "medicine is changing. It's not what it used to be. You need something more reliable. I'm Dr. Sophia Chen now, one of the country's leading transplant surgeons. But back then, I was just their disappointing daughter who refused to follow their carefully laid plans. The problem started during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to Johns Hopkins University's pre-med program, my dream school, with a partial scholarship. But my parents had other ideas. Business school, Dad announced one evening over dinner. "Your cousin Marcus is making 6 figures right out of college in finance. That's the future." "But Dad, I want to be a doctor, like you." He set down his fork, his face hardening. Being a doctor isn't what it used to be, Sophia. Insurance companies, paperwork, lawsuits. I want better for you. What they really wanted was for me to join United Capital, the investment firm where my uncle was a partner. They had it all planned out. I would get my MBA, work my way up through the company, and eventually take over my uncle's position. It's all arranged, Mom said, sliding a university brochure across the table. Your uncle has already spoken to the admissions office at Wharton. With our connections, you're guaranteed a spot. I pushed the brochure away. I don't want to work in finance. I want to save lives. Save lives. Mom scoffed. Do you know how many doctors are drowning in student debt? Working endless hours just to make ends meet. I don't care about the money. Well, you should. Dad's fist hit the table, making the dishes rattle. We didn't work this hard to watch you throw away your future on some idealistic dream. That night marked the beginning of a war in our house. Every dinner became a battlefield, every conversation a negotiation. They tried everything: guilt trips, threats, even bribes. Think about the family name, Mom would plead. Think about your future children. But I couldn't give up my dream. Medicine wasn't just a career choice for me, it was a calling. I spent my evenings volunteering at the local hospital, shadowing doctors, learning everything I could. The more time I spent there, the more certain I became. The breaking point came 2 weeks before graduation. I had secretly accepted the offer from Johns Hopkins, using my savings from summer jobs to pay the deposit. When the acceptance package arrived in the mail, my mother opened it before I could get home. I walked into chaos. How dare you? Mom was standing in the living room, papers scattered around her feet. Going behind our backs like this. Dad sat in his armchair, his face a mask of disappointment. We gave you everything, Sophia. The best schools, every opportunity. And this is how you repay us? It's my life. I said, my voice shaking but determined. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. Help people. Mom laughed bitterly. You can't even help yourself make the right decision. Well, if you're so determined to ruin your life, you won't do it on our dime. Dad stood up slowly. You have a choice, Sophia. Accept the place at Wharton that we've arranged, or what? Or you're on your own. Completely. No support, no money, no home. I looked at them. These people who had raised me, who had taught me to stand up for what I believed in, now trying to force me to abandon my dreams. Then I guess I'm on my own. The next few hours passed in a blur. I packed what I could into my old Honda Civic. Clothes, books, the stethoscope I'd bought with my own money. My parents watched from the doorway, probably thinking I'd break down and change my mind. But I didn't. If you drive away now, Mom called out as I started the car, don't bother coming back. Dad's voice followed me down the driveway. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I drove straight to Aunt Maria's house. She was my mother's younger sister, the black sheep of the family who had chosen to become a high school teacher instead of joining the family business. She took one look at my tear-stained face and opened her arms. That night, curled up on her couch, I told her everything. They think they're protecting you, she said, stroking my hair. But they're just scared. Scared of watching you struggle, scared of seeing you choose a different path than the one they planned. What if they're right? I whispered. What if I fail? Aunt Maria smiled. Then you'll fail doing something you love, instead of succeeding at something that makes you miserable. She helped me plan everything: student loans, part-time jobs, scholarship applications. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. "You can stay with me until you leave for Baltimore," she said. "And during breaks too. This is your home now." The next few months were a crash course in independence. I worked 2 jobs over the summer, mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at the hospital gift shop. Every penny went into my college fund. My parents didn't call. Not when I graduated high school. Aunt Maria cheered loud enough for 3 people. Not when I packed up for college. Not even on my birthday. But as I drove away from Connecticut toward Baltimore, toward my future, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sometimes being cut off is really being set free. I just didn't know then that 12 years later, they would need me more than I ever needed them. Medical school was everything I dreamed of and harder than I ever imagined. While most of my classmates had family support, both financial and emotional, I worked my way through every semester. Between classes, clinical rotations, and part-time jobs, sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed. My first year at Johns Hopkins, I lived in the smallest apartment I could find. Really just a converted garage with a hot plate and a shower that barely worked. But it was mine, earned with my own money. I still remember my first day in an anatomy lab. Standing over the cadaver, I felt a mix of awe and determination. This was where I belonged. While other students flinched or turned green, I was fascinated. My lab partner, Michael, noticed. "You're different," he said during our lunch break. "Most people are just trying not to throw up on their first day." I shrugged. This is why I'm here, to understand how to fix people. Michael became my first real friend in medical school. He came from old money. His family had a wing named after them at 3 different hospitals, but he never made me feel less for having to work my way through school. "You're crazy," he'd say, finding me studying in the library at 2 a.m. after my shift at the campus cafe. "Let me help. My trust fund is just sitting there." But I always refused. This was my journey, my struggle, and I would make it on my own. During my second year, I discovered my calling. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the head of transplant surgery, gave a guest lecture that changed my life. She showed us a video of a heart transplant she performed, the intricate dance of removing a failing organ and replacing it with one that could give someone a second chance at life. After class, I gathered my courage and approached her. "Dr. Martinez, I'd love to learn more about transplant surgery." She looked at me thoughtfully. "It's the hardest specialty to get into. Long hours, high stress, constant on-call. Most students run the other way. I'm not most students." Something in my voice must have convinced her. She offered me a research position in her lab, unpaid, of course, but invaluable experience. I took it without hesitation, even though it meant picking up extra weekend shifts to make up for the time I'd spend in the lab. Meanwhile, life went on back home. Aunt Maria kept me updated about my parents, though I never asked. Dad's practice was doing well. Mom had joined the hospital board. My cousin Marcus, their shining example of success, had made junior partner at United Capital. "They ask about you," Aunt Maria would say during our weekly phone calls. "They'll never admit it, but they read every article about the medical school in the local paper, hoping to see your name." I didn't respond to that. The pain of their rejection had hardened into something else, not quite anger, but a cold determination to succeed despite them, not because of them. During my third-year rotations, I finally found my groove. While other students dreaded the long hours and intense pressure, I thrived on it. Surgery became my home, the operating room my sanctuary. Dr. Martinez noticed. She started inviting me to observe her transplant surgeries, teaching me things that weren't in any textbook. The hard part isn't the technical skill. She told me one night as we scrubbed out after a successful liver transplant. It's carrying the weight of knowing that every decision you make could mean life or death for your patient. I graduated from medical school ranked second in my class. The ceremony was bittersweet. Aunt Maria cheered from the audience, but the 2 empty seats beside her felt like an accusation. My residency match was everything I'd hoped for. The transplant surgery program at Massachusetts General Hospital. 5 more years of brutal hours, endless study, and gradually increasing responsibility. I specialized in high-risk cases that other surgeons wouldn't touch. My research focused on improving success rates in complex multi-organ transplants. Slowly, my reputation grew. By my 4th year of residency, I was being called in to consult on the most difficult cases. Patients started requesting me specifically, even though I was still technically in training. The attending surgeons trusted me with increasingly complex procedures. Then came the case that would make my career. Emma Collins was 8 years old, suffering from a rare genetic condition that was causing multiple organ failure. She needed a combined heart-liver transplant, a procedure so complex that most hospitals wouldn't even attempt it. Her parents had been told to prepare for the worst, but I couldn't accept that. I spent weeks researching her case, developing a new surgical approach that might work. Dr. Anderson, the chief of surgery, listened to my proposal with growing interest. "It's never been done quite this way," he said, studying my diagrams. "But theoretically, it could work. Let me try." I pleaded. "She deserves a chance." He agreed, but with a condition. He would supervise, but I would lead the surgery. It would be my chance to prove myself, but also my greatest risk. If something went wrong, my career could be over before it really began. The surgery took 14 hours. 14 hours of intense concentration, split-second decisions, and the kind of precision that leaves no room for error. By hour 10, even Dr. Anderson was looking tired, but I felt more focused than ever. When we finally closed, when Emma's new heart was beating strongly, and her new liver was functioning perfectly, Dr. Anderson looked at me with newfound respect. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said as we scrubbed out. "I've never seen anything quite like that." Emma's case was written up in medical journals. I was invited to present at conferences, teach my technique to other surgeons. At 30, I became the youngest attending transplant surgeon in Mass General's history. My parents must have read about it. The medical community isn't that large, and success stories like Emma's make news, but they never reached out. I told myself it didn't matter. I had built my own life, my own success, without them. I had proved them wrong about everything. Then, on a routine Tuesday morning, my assistant handed me a new case file. "Priority transplant evaluation," she said. "Patient needs a specialized procedure." Very complex case. I opened the file and felt the world stop spinning. The patient's name was James Chen, my father. I stared at my father's medical file for what felt like hours. His condition was serious. End-stage liver disease complicated by a rare vascular disorder. He needed a specialized type of transplant that only a handful of surgeons in the country could perform. I was one of them. The irony wasn't lost on me. The career path they had so thoroughly rejected was now their only hope. According to the file, they had been referred to Mass General by their local hospital. They probably had no idea I worked here. "Dr. Chen." My assistant's voice snapped me back to reality. "The patient's initial consultation is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Should I reassign the case?" I thought about it. I could easily pass this to another surgeon, avoid the confrontation altogether. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe that last stubborn thread of daughterly duty, made me shake my head. No, keep it on my schedule. That night, I barely slept. I reviewed his case over and over, though I had memorized every detail at first glance. The surgery he needed was one I had pioneered, a modified approach to liver transplantation for patients with complicated vascular issues. Without it, his chances of survival were less than 20%. At 8:55 the next morning, I stood outside my office, heart pounding. Through the window, I could see them sitting in the consultation room. My father, noticeably thinner than I remembered, and my mother, her hair now streaked with gray. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Sophia Chen." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face went pale, then flushed. For a moment, we all just stared at each other, 12 years of absence hanging between us like a physical thing. "Sophia?" My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Mom." I kept my voice professional as I sat down behind my desk. "I've reviewed your case thoroughly, Dad. The situation is serious, but there are options we can discuss. You're the specialist they referred us to." My father sounded dazed. "Yes, I developed the surgical technique you need. Currently, I'm one of only 3 surgeons in the country qualified to perform it." My mother started crying silently. My father just stared at me, seeing for the first time the doctor I had become, the doctor they had tried to prevent me from being. I walked them through the procedure, explaining every detail with clinical detachment. Inside, my emotions were chaos, but outwardly, I maintained my professional composure. The success rate for this procedure, with me as primary surgeon, is 94%, I concluded. Without it, your prognosis is poor. The choice, of course, is yours. My father cleared his throat. You're really the best option I have?" "Yes, and as your doctor, I recommend proceeding with the surgery as soon as possible." "As your daughter?" I paused, the word feeling strange on my tongue. "That's more complicated." "Sophia." My mother reached across the desk, trying to take my hand. I pulled back slightly. "We were wrong, so terribly wrong." "Yes, you were." I kept my voice steady. "You kicked me out for wanting exactly this, to be a doctor, to save lives. And now here we are." "We thought we were protecting you," my father said softly. "No, you thought you were controlling me. There's a difference." I stood up, gathering my papers. "I'll give you time to think about your options. If you decide to proceed with me as your surgeon, my office will handle all the arrangements. If you prefer to seek treatment elsewhere, I can refer you to the other qualified surgeons, though their waiting lists are significantly longer." As I reached the door, my father called out, "Sophia, wait." I turned back. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "We're both so sorry." For a moment, I saw him not as my patient or as the father who had rejected me, but as a man facing his own mortality while confronting the magnitude of his mistakes. "I know," I replied softly. "But right now, that's not what matters. What matters is saving your life. We can deal with everything else after." The surgery was scheduled for 2 weeks later. During that time, my parents tried several times to have personal conversations with me, but I maintained professional boundaries. I couldn't be both their daughter and their doctor, not yet. The morning of the surgery, My father looked scared for the first time I could remember. "Sophia," he caught my hand as they were preparing to take him to the operating room. "If something goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," I said firmly. "I'm the best at what I do, and I don't fail." The surgery took 11 hours. Every cut, every suture was perfect. I wouldn't accept anything less. When I finally walked out to the waiting room, my mother practically collapsed with relief at my smile. The surgery was successful. I told her, "He's stable, and the new liver is functioning well." She hugged me then, and for the first time in 12 years, I let her. During my father's recovery, we slowly began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. 12 years of hurt doesn't disappear overnight. But as he healed physically, we started to heal emotionally too. "I watch you with your other patients," he said one day during his recovery. "You were born for this. We were such fools to try to stop you." 6 months after the surgery, I invited them to my office again, not as patients this time, but as parents. I showed them my awards, my published research, the thank you letters from patients I'd saved. "You did all this despite us," my mother said, tears in her eyes. "No," I corrected her. "I did it because of me, because it's who I was meant to be." Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the hardest person to operate on is yourself. Cutting away the anger, transplanting forgiveness in its place. My parents and I will never have the relationship we might have had if they had supported me from the beginning. But we have something different now. Something built on respect, understanding, and the recognition that sometimes the best thing parents can do is let their children find their own path. I still keep my father's patient file in my desk drawer, not as a reminder of their rejection, but as proof that life has a way of bringing things full circle. They kicked me out for wanting to be a doctor, and being a doctor gave me the power to save my father's life. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's proving yourself right. Last week, a young intern came to me, torn between her passion for surgery and her family's pressure to choose a different specialty. "My parents say surgery is too demanding, that I'll never have a normal life," she told me, reminding me so much of myself at her age. I shared my story with her, showing her that sometimes the hardest path is the right one, because that's the real legacy I want to leave. Not just as the surgeon who pioneered new techniques or saved countless lives, but as someone who proved that you should never let anyone else define your dreams. Even now, when I stand in the operating room preparing to save another life, I think about that 18-year-old girl who drove away from home with nothing but a dream. She was right all along. Sometimes being cut off is the first incision in becoming who you're meant to be.
Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there all along, in my mother's tight-lipped disappointment whenever I mentioned my business classes, in my father's lectures about real careers over dinner, in the way they showcased my cousin Michael's medical school acceptance letter in the living room while my business school honors gathered dust in a drawer. But nothing could have prepared me for that spring afternoon when everything fell apart. I remember every detail of that day. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom outside our family home, their delicate pink petals drifting across our perfectly manicured lawn. I had just returned from my college graduation ceremony, my business degree with highest honors still rolled up in my hand. The familiar scent of my mother's famous bulgogi wafted from the kitchen. She always cooked Korean food on important days, a reminder of our heritage and her expectations. "Sarah," my father's voice cut through the air like a scalpel. He stood in the doorway of his home office, still wearing his white doctor's coat from the hospital. "We need to talk." The office was a shrine to medical achievement. Multiple diplomas and certifications lined the walls, interrupted only by photographs of my father with various dignitaries at medical conferences. A model of the human skeleton stood sentinel in the corner, its empty eye sockets watching our family drama unfold. Your mother and I have been patient, he began, each word measured and precise. We give you 4 years to come to your senses about this business degree. He spat out the words like they tasted bitter. But now it's time to grow up. We've arranged for you to take the MCAT next month. With some intensive studying, you can still apply for medical school this cycle. I gripped my diploma tighter, the paper crinkling under my fingers. Dad, I'm not becoming a doctor. I have a job lined up with Anderson Consulting. They're one of the top healthcare consulting firms in the country. A consultant. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with disgust. You want to be one of those people who tell real doctors how to do their jobs. I want to help improve healthcare systems, I tried to explain. Make hospitals more efficient, help more patients get better care. Enough. My father slammed his hand on the desk. No daughter of mine will waste her life pushing papers. You're a Kim. Your grandfather was a doctor. I'm a doctor. Your cousin Michael is becoming a doctor. This is our legacy. It's your legacy, Dad, not mine. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hands trembled as she gripped her apron. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Then perhaps you should find a new family to disappoint. His voice was cold, clinical. If you won't uphold the Kim family tradition, you are no longer welcome in this house. You can't be serious. But looking at their faces, I knew they were. Mom? She turned away, wiping her eyes. Listen to your father, Sarah. Medicine is everything to this family. Without it, what are we? I'm your daughter, I whispered. Isn't that enough? My father opened his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Here's $100. Take it and leave. When you're ready to apologize and apply to medical school, you can come back. I stared at the envelope, memories flooding my mind. All the times I'd helped organize patient files at their private practice during summer breaks. The nights I'd spent researching healthcare management innovations, dreaming of ways to modernize their outdated systems. The pride in my voice when I told people my parents ran Kim Family Medical Center, one of the most respected private hospitals in the city. None of it mattered. To them, I was just another failed dream. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the $27 I had left from my graduation dinner, placed it on top of the $100 they'd given me. $127. That's my starting capital. Remember this moment because one day you'll regret choosing your legacy over your daughter. My father scoffed. Big words from someone who can't even write a prescription. I turned and walked out of that office, out of that house, leaving behind everything I'd ever known. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a message from Anderson Consulting. Excited to have you join us next month. Your insights into healthcare systems are exactly what we're looking for. They had no idea how personal my mission to transform healthcare had just become. I spent that night in a cheap motel, using precious dollars from my $127 fund. As I lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, I made myself a promise. I would build something bigger than Kim Family Medical Center, something that would change not just one hospital, but the entire healthcare system. And when I succeeded, I would make sure my parents remembered exactly why they lost their daughter. The next morning, I walked into a local bank and opened a business account with $100 of my remaining money. The teller looked at me skeptically as I filled out the paperwork, probably wondering what kind of business I could possibly start with such a small amount. Name of business? She asked, fingers hovering over her keyboard. I thought for a moment, then smiled. Phoenix Healthcare Solutions. Phoenix, like the bird that rises from the ashes, exactly like that. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my role at Anderson Consulting. During the day, I analyzed healthcare systems, identified inefficiencies, and proposed solutions that saved hospitals millions. At night, I built Phoenix Healthcare Solutions, starting with a simple website and business cards I designed myself. My first client came through pure chance. At a coffee shop near Anderson's offices, I overheard two doctors complaining about their struggling private practice. Without thinking, I turned around and introduced myself. Your problem isn't your medical care, I told them after listening to their issues. It's your systems. You're losing 30% of your potential revenue through inefficient billing practices and scheduling gaps. They looked skeptical, but desperate enough to listen. I offered to fix their systems for a small fee plus 10% of any revenue increases for the first year. They agreed, probably assuming they had nothing to lose. Within 3 months, their practice's revenue had doubled. Word spread quickly through the medical community. Soon, I was juggling my day job with an increasing number of private clients. My tiny motel room became my office, its walls covered with flowcharts and system analyses. 6 months after being kicked out, I had saved enough to rent a small office space. A year later, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had 10 employees and was managing systems for 15 medical practices. I never told my clients about my parents or Kim Family Medical Center. In fact, I rarely used my full name, going by Sarah P. for Phoenix in all business dealings, but I kept tabs on my family's hospital through industry news and gossip. They were struggling, though they'd never admit it. The healthcare landscape was changing, becoming more corporate, more efficient. Private hospitals like theirs were being squeezed by larger healthcare groups with better systems and more resources. I could have helped them. I knew exactly how to modernize their operations, how to make them competitive in the new healthcare economy. But they had made their choice, and I was making mine. By my 3rd year, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had expanded beyond simple consulting. We were buying struggling practices, modernizing them, and either selling them for profit or incorporating them into our growing network. Each acquisition taught me more about the industry, about the complex dance of healthcare politics and economics. I hired the best talent I could find, doctors who understood both medicine and business, tech experts who could build cutting-edge medical systems, lawyers who specialize in healthcare regulations. Together, we were building something revolutionary, a healthcare group that combined medical excellence with business efficiency. The irony wasn't lost on me. In rejecting my parents' dream of becoming a doctor, I had ended up deeper in the medical world than they could have imagined. But I was doing it my way, proving that there was more than one path to improving healthcare. 5 years after being kicked out, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had become Phoenix Medical Group, a billion-dollar corporation that owned 30 hospitals across the country. We were known for turning around struggling facilities, for introducing innovative systems that improved both patient care and profitability. I had an apartment in the city's most exclusive building, a corner office with a view of the skyline, and more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I still kept that initial bank receipt for my $100 deposit in my wallet, a reminder of where I started. And then, on a crisp autumn morning, my assistant walked into my office with news that made my heart stop. "Miss Phoenix, Kim Family Medical Center just filed for bankruptcy protection. They're looking for buyers." I picked up the report she brought, my hands steady despite the emotions churning inside me. The numbers told a familiar story. Declining revenues, mounting debts, outdated systems. Everything I had warned them about, everything I could have prevented. "Should I add them to the potential acquisitions list?" my assistant asked. I looked out my office window at the city below, at the empire I'd built from $127 and spite. "No," I said finally, "this one's personal. Set up a meeting with their board. It's time for Sarah Kim to come home." What I didn't know then was that my parents' hospital was just the beginning. The real battle, and the real revenge, was still to come. The next morning, as I prepared for the board meeting that would begin my takeover of Kim Family Medical Center, I couldn't help but remember my father's words. Big words from someone who can't even write a prescription. He was right. I couldn't write prescriptions, but I could sign checks that would decide the fate of his beloved hospital, and that was just the start of what I could do. Part 2. The return. The Kim Family Medical Center looked smaller than I remembered. The building that once loomed large in my childhood memories now seemed tired, its once gleaming facade dulled by time and neglect. The state-of-the-art facility sign was faded, its letters peeling, a perfect metaphor for the hospital's current state. I adjusted my Armani suit, a power move that cost more than the $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. My heels clicked against the marble floor of the lobby as I walked toward the boardroom, each step echoing with purpose. The security guard did a double take as I passed. Perhaps he remembered the teenage girl who used to help file papers during summer breaks. "Miss Phoenix?" My assistant, Lisa, appeared at my elbow. "The board is waiting. Your parents are already inside." I paused, checking my reflection in a nearby window. I looked different now, sharper, harder, successful in a way that would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago. "Have they been told who's coming?" "No, As requested, they only know they're meeting with the CEO of Phoenix Medical Group. I smiled. Perfect. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and an overwhelming sense of old-world medical tradition. The kind of room where important men made important decisions about other people's lives. Now it would witness something entirely different. My father sat at the head of the table, still wearing his white coat like armor. My mother sat beside him, her face lined with worry she couldn't quite hide. The other board members, mostly old family friends and colleagues, filled the remaining seats. All of them had watched me grow up. None of them recognized me now. Thank you all for meeting today. I began, my voice steady and professional. I'm Sarah Phoenix, CEO of Phoenix Medical Group. The silence that followed my introduction was absolute. I watched the recognition dawn in their eyes. First confusion, then disbelief, finally understanding. My father's face had gone pale, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. Sarah? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah Kim. Actually, it's Sarah Phoenix now, legally changed. I moved to the front of the room, plugging my laptop into the projector. Shall we discuss the future of Kim Family Medical Center? This is ridiculous. My father finally found his voice, standing up abruptly. We called this meeting to speak with Phoenix Medical Group's CEO about a potential acquisition, not to. And you are speaking with Phoenix Medical Group's CEO. I cut him off smoothly, pulling up our company's latest financial reports. Now let's talk about your hospital's $17 million debt, your outdated systems, and your declining patient satisfaction scores. He sputtered, you can't possibly own a billion-dollar medical group? I finished for him. The same group that's been buying up struggling hospitals across the country. The one that's revolutionizing healthcare management? I clicked to the next slide, showing Phoenix Medical Group's current holdings. I think you'll find I can, and I do. Dr. Park, one of the senior board members, leaned forward adjusting his glasses. Sarah, you built all this? Remember when I said I wanted to improve healthcare systems? I looked directly at my parents. This is what I meant. Phoenix Medical Group owns 30 hospitals, all running at peak efficiency. We've increased patient care quality while reducing costs. Everything I tried to tell you about 5 years ago, I've proven it works. The board members exchanged glances. They knew the numbers. Kim Family Medical Center was months away from complete collapse. Phoenix Medical Group was their best hope for survival. My father stood up again, his face flushed. We'll find another buyer. Will you? I pulled up another slide. Your debt is held by Sterling Financial. Would you like to know who owns the controlling interest in Sterling? I paused, letting the implications sink in. I've spent 5 years building a safety net around this hospital, making sure that when it finally failed, and we all knew it would, I would be the only viable option. You planned this? My mother's voice cracked. All this time? No, Mother. You and Dad planned this the day you chose your precious medical legacy over your daughter. I kept my voice level, professional, even as years of hurt threatened to surface. I just made sure I'd be in a position to pick up the pieces. The next hour was a blur of numbers, projections, and terms. I laid out Phoenix Medical Group's offer. We would assume all debt, modernize the facilities, and retain most of the staff. The hospital would keep its name, but management would be completely restructured. And the current leadership? Dr. Park asked carefully, glancing at my father. Dr. Kim will be offered a position as a senior physician, focusing solely on patient care. I met my father's glare steadily. All administrative duties will be handled by Phoenix Medical Group's management team. The message was clear. He would lose all control over the hospital he built. You can't do this, he said, but his voice had lost its authority. This hospital is my life's work. No, Father, this hospital was your dream. Now it's my reality. I stood up, gathering my materials. The offer expires in 48 hours. I suggest you consider it carefully. Without Phoenix Medical Group, Kim Family Medical Center will be bankrupt within 3 months. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and one more thing. I pulled out my wallet and removed 2 worn bills. The same $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. Placed them on the table. I believe this belongs to you. Consider it my final repayment for choosing business over medicine. The walk back to my car was surreal. Through the hospital windows, I could see staff going about their duties, unaware that their entire world was about to change. In the parking lot, I passed my old parking spot, reserved for Dr. Kim, where I used to wait for rides home after helping out at the hospital. Lisa was waiting by the car. How did it go? Exactly as expected. I slid into the back seat, finally allowing myself to feel the weight of what had just happened. Have legal ready the paperwork. They'll sign. You seem very confident. They don't have a choice. I looked back at the hospital, remembering all the dreams and disappointments it held. And neither do I. That evening, as I sat in my penthouse office reviewing acquisition documents, my phone lit up with messages. First from my mother, a long emotional plea about family and forgiveness. Then from various board members, some congratulating me on my success, others trying to secure their positions in the new regime. Nothing from my father. I wasn't surprised. His pride had always been his weakness. The same pride that had made him throw away his daughter over a career choice would now cost him his hospital. Just before midnight, my security team alerted me to a visitor in the lobby. Through the security feed, I watched my father pace back and forth, still in his white coat, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Should we send him up? The security guard asked. I considered it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to make him wait, to let him feel the same helplessness I felt that night 5 years ago. But I was no longer that wounded girl with $127 to her name. I was Sarah Phoenix, CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. Send him up. The elevator ride must have felt eternal for him. When he finally stepped into my office, his eyes widened at the view, at the obvious signs of success surrounding his disappointing daughter. Nice office, he said stiffly. Better than a garage, I suppose. I gestured to a chair. Would you like to sit? He remained standing, his doctor's posture perfect even now. The board wants to accept your offer. I know. They think you'll save the hospital. I will. He flinched at my confidence. You really built all this by yourself? No, I stood up, walking to the window. I built it with the help of people who believed in me, people who saw that there's more than one way to help patients, people who didn't let their pride blind them to innovation. Sarah, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words for the first time in his life. When you left, when we made you leave, you thought I'd come crawling back. I finished for him. That I'd realize you were right about medicine being the only worthy path. Instead, I built something bigger than you ever imagined possible. I was wrong, he said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. I turned to face him, really looked at him for the first time in 5 years. The great Dr. Kim, the man who had loomed so large in my childhood, now seemed small in my massive office. Yes, you were. I picked up the acquisition contract from my desk. Sign this, and Kim Family Medical Center will survive. Fight me, and I'll let it collapse. Either way, I win. His hand shook slightly as he took the contract. Will you at least keep the Kim name? The hospital name stays. But make no mistake, from the moment you sign this, it's no longer yours. Everything you built, everything you dreamed of passing on to a doctor in the family, becomes part of Phoenix Medical Group. He nodded slowly, the fight finally leaving him. May I borrow a pen? I handed him my fountain pen, a Mont Blanc that cost more than that first $100 he'd given me to leave. He signed without reading, a broken man accepting defeat. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built, even if it's not what I wanted for you. Thank you, I said quietly, but I didn't build it for your pride. After he left, I stood at my window for a long time, watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there was a small motel room where a scared young woman had once promised herself she'd prove everyone wrong. A cheap bank branch where $100 had become the seed of an empire. A coffee shop where a chance conversation had launched a revolution. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lisa. Schedule a full audit of Kim Family Medical Center for next week. I want to know everything, every outdated system, every inefficiency, every opportunity for improvement. Of course, and Dr. Kim. I thought about my father's defeated expression as he signed away his life's work. Give him an office on the 4th floor. No administrative access, just a standard physician's privileges. Let him keep his white coat and his pride. That's all he has left now. But the story wasn't over. Taking over Kim Family Medical Center was just the beginning. Because in those 5 years of building Phoenix Medical Group, I discovered something bigger than revenge. I found a mission. The healthcare system was broken, not just in my parents' hospital but everywhere, and I was just getting started fixing it. The real question was, how far would I go to change everything they thought they knew about medicine? Part 3. The Revolution. The audit of Kim Family Medical Center was worse than I expected. 5 years of stubbornly clinging to outdated methods had left the hospital in shambles. Equipment needed updating, staff needed training, and the entire administrative system was practically medieval. Standing in my father's, now my, office, I reviewed the findings with my executive team. Their patient record system is entirely paper-based, my director reported, disbelief evident in his voice. In 2024, it's like stepping back in time. I ran my finger along the dusty oak desk, remembering how many times I'd stood before it as a child, listening to lectures about the noble profession of medicine. How long to implement our standard systems? 3 months minimum, and that's if we work around the clock. Make it 2. I looked out the window at the hospital grounds. The cherry trees were blooming again, just like the day I'd left. I want this place transformed before the cherry blossoms fall. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I moved my office temporarily to the hospital, overseeing every detail of the transformation. Staff were retrained, systems were modernized, and the entire facility was dragged forcefully into the modern era. My father kept his head down, seeing his patients and avoiding me. Sometimes I catch glimpses of him in the hallways, his white coat no longer carrying the same authority it once did. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. My mother tried a different approach. She started leaving containers of homemade bulgogi in my office, just like she used to when I helped at the hospital during summer breaks. I returned each one untouched, with a polite note, "Thank you, but I have lunch meetings." The local medical community buzzed with gossip about the prodigal daughter's triumphant return. Some praised my success, others criticized my hostile takeover of my own family's hospital. My cousin Michael, now a resident at a prestigious hospital across town, gave interviews about the tragedy of the situation. I ignored it all, focusing instead on the numbers. Within the first month, patient satisfaction scores rose by 15%. By the second month, operating costs had decreased by 22%. The hospital was healing, even if my family wasn't. Then came the incident that changed everything. I was working late one night, reviewing implementation reports, when the emergency alert system I'd installed lit up. A major traffic accident had occurred on the highway, multiple casualties, severe trauma cases. Under the old system, Kim Family Medical Center would have diverted most cases to larger hospitals. But we weren't the old system anymore. I rushed to the emergency department, watching as our new protocols kicked in. Digital systems tracked bed availability in real time. AI-assisted triage software helped prioritize cases. Staff movements were choreographed with military precision, guided by efficiency algorithms I'd spent years perfecting. And there, in the middle of it all, was my father. His white coat was stained with blood as he moved from patient to patient, his experienced hands steady even in chaos. For the first time, I saw him truly seeing our new systems in action, how they supported rather than replaced medical expertise, how they helped doctors save more lives. Hours later, when the crisis had passed, he found me in my office. 14 critical patients, he said quietly. We didn't lose a single one. I looked up from my laptop. That's what happens when you combine good medicine with good systems. He stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then, your mother misses you. We both do. I've been here every day for 2 months. You know what I mean, he sighed, suddenly looking very tired. When did you become so hard, Sarah? The night my parents told me I was worth nothing without a medical degree. I kept my voice level, professional. The same night I learned that sometimes you have to choose between being loved and being respected. And you chose respect. I chose success, on my own terms. I turned back to my work. The cherry blossoms are falling, Father. How does it feel to watch your old world fall with them? He left without answering, but something had shifted. The next day, I found a stack of patient files on my desk, cases where our new systems had made a critical difference. A peace offering, perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement. By the 3rd month, Kim Family Medical Center had become the flagship of Phoenix Medical Group's new healthcare model. We were receiving inquiries from hospitals across the country, all wanting to learn our methods. The same board members who had doubted me now fought for chances to sign my praises to industry publications. My father gradually began attending administrative meetings, not as a leader but as an observer. He asked questions about the systems, showed interest in the improvements, small steps but significant ones. Then came the day I found him training younger doctors on how to use our new diagnostic software. "It's quite extraordinary," he was saying as I passed by the conference room. "The AI can spot patterns we might miss, but it still needs our medical judgment to make final decisions. It's not replacing us, it's making us better doctors." I stood in the doorway, watching the man who had once dismissed all business innovations as threats to real medicine, now championing our systems. That evening, he knocked on my office door again. "May I come in?" I gestured to a chair. "The cherry blossoms," he said, looking out at the bare trees. "They're gone." "Yes. And with them, my old hospital." He turned to face me. "You've built something remarkable here, Sarah. Something I was too proud to see coming." I thought of that young woman with $127, of all the nights she worked while others doubted her. I couldn't have done it as a doctor. "No," he agreed quietly. "You've done something harder. You've changed how doctors work, how we think, how we help people." He placed an envelope on my desk. "I'd like to retire." I opened the envelope. Inside was his resignation letter, along with a proposal for a teaching position, training new doctors on integrating modern healthcare systems with traditional medical practice. "You want to teach. I want to help build the future you've shown us is possible." He smiled slightly. "If you let me." I studied him for a long moment. The great Dr. Kim, asking his business graduate daughter for permission to help shape the future of medicine. Life had a sense of irony after all. "The position is yours," I said finally, "on one condition." "Name it." "Have dinner with me tonight. You, me, and Mom. Not as CEO and staff, but as family." I held up my hand as he started to speak, not to forget or to pretend nothing happened, but to start something new. That night, over my mother's bulgogi, we talked, really talked, perhaps for the first time in years, about dreams and disappointments, about pride and prejudice, about the different ways people can heal others. "I wanted you to be a doctor," my father said, "because I thought that was the only way to make a difference in healthcare. I couldn't see that you had a bigger vision." "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand that sometimes the best way to help people isn't always the traditional way." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry we couldn't see that sooner." 6 months later, Kim Family Medical Center was named Most Innovative Hospital by Healthcare Leadership magazine. The article featured a photo of me in my office, the hospital visible through the window behind me. On my desk, clearly visible, was a framed dollar bill, part of the $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. The caption read, "Sarah Phoenix, formerly Kim, proves that sometimes the best medicine isn't practiced in a white coat." My father keeps a copy of that magazine in his teaching room. Next to it is a new photo, him teaching young doctors while I stand in the background, both of us working in different ways to improve healthcare. The cherry trees still bloom every spring outside the hospital, but now they remind me not of endings, but of new beginnings. Of how sometimes you have to lose everything to build something better. Of how the hardest person to heal is often yourself. I still run Phoenix Medical Group, still work to revolutionize healthcare across the country. But now when I visit Kim Family Medical Center, I sometimes join my parents for dinner. We're not the same family we were, too much has happened for that. But we're building something new, something that respects both tradition and innovation. And sometimes, late at night in my office, I look at that framed dollar bill and smile. Because the scared young woman who left with $127 didn't just build an empire. She built a bridge between two worlds, between old medicine and new, between a father's dreams and a daughter's vision. That's worth more than all the medical degrees in the world. Last week, a young intern asked me if I regret not becoming a doctor. I showed her our latest patient outcome statistics, how our systems have helped save thousands of lives, how we've made healthcare more accessible and efficient across the country. "I didn't become a doctor," I told her. "I became something new. And sometimes that's exactly what medicine needs." My father, passing by at that moment, stopped and smiled. "And sometimes," he added, "that's exactly what a family needs too." The cherry blossoms are blooming again outside my window. But this time, They're not marking an ending. They're celebrating a revolution in medicine and family, and in the heart of a woman who dared to heal healthcare her own way. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right.
I never thought I'd be sitting across from my stepmother in a boardroom of Manhattan's most prestigious law firm, watching her realize that the teenager she once kicked out was now her only hope of saving everything she had. But life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? My name is Olivia Mitchell, and my story begins in a modest suburban home in Connecticut, where my father and I lived happily until I was 12. My mother had passed away when I was just 4, a car accident that left me with only faded memories of her laugh and the scent of her lavender perfume. For 8 years, it was just Dad and me, and we were happy. He was a high school history teacher who spent his evenings helping me with homework and weekends taking me to museums and libraries. Then Catherine Morgan walked into our lives. I still remember the day Dad introduced us. She was beautiful, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer handbag that probably cost more than Dad's monthly salary. She worked in real estate, specialized in luxury properties, and somehow found herself interested in a humble history teacher. "Olivia, sweetheart," Dad said, his eyes shining with hope I hadn't seen since Mom died. "This is Catherine. We've been seeing each other, and I wanted you to meet her." Catherine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Olivia. Your father has told me so much about you." I was 12, not stupid. I saw the way she looked around our modest home, her nose slightly wrinkled as if she smelled something unpleasant. But Dad was happy, truly happy, for the first time in years. So I smiled back and tried to be welcoming. The wedding happened 6 months later. Catherine moved into our home, bringing with her expensive furniture, silk curtains, and a constant stream of criticism about everything from our old family photos to the way I dressed. "Darling," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "don't you think it's time to replace these old pictures? They make the house look so dated." The photos she referred to were the only ones I had of my mother. Dad started working longer hours to keep up with Catherine's lifestyle. She convinced him to take out a second mortgage to renovate the house, replace all our furniture, and join the country club she insisted was essential for networking. I threw myself into my studies, finding refuge in books and the law club at school. The idea of justice, of right and wrong clearly defined by rules and precedents, fascinated me. My teachers noticed my passion. Mrs. Henderson, my English teacher, even helped me apply for a prestigious mock trial competition. I won first place. When I rushed home to share the news, Catherine was hosting one of her real estate cocktail parties. I found Dad in the kitchen, helping the caterers. "Dad, I won the state mock trial competition. Mrs. Henderson says I could get a scholarship if I keep this up." He hugged me quickly, pride shining in his eyes. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We should celebrate." "James," Catherine's sharp voice cut through our moment, "the Andersons are asking about your opinion on their property dispute. Stop wasting time in the kitchen and come be social." Dad's smile faltered. "Coming, dear. We'll celebrate later, Olivia." We never did. Catherine's true colors emerged fully when I turned 16. I had been accepted into a summer law program at Yale, a prestigious opportunity that could open doors for college scholarships. The program cost $3,000. "Absolutely not," Catherine declared when I showed them the acceptance letter. "It's a waste of money. You'll never be a lawyer, Olivia. You don't have what it takes." "But my teachers say." "Your teachers are filling your head with unrealistic dreams. Besides, I need to renovate my office. That's a much better investment." I turned to Dad, hoping he would defend me, support my dreams as he always had before. But he just stared at his hands, silent. That night, I heard them arguing through the walls. "She's becoming a problem, James. All these grand ideas about being a lawyer. She needs to understand her place. Not everyone is meant for success. She's my daughter, Catherine. She's smart. She works hard. She's a distraction. Do you know what my clients think when they see her walking around in those shabby clothes, talking about mock trials? It's embarrassing." The next morning, I found a part-time job at the local library. I started saving every penny, determined to pay for the program myself. For 2 months, I worked after school and on weekends, eating lunch at the library to save money. Then Catherine found my savings, $2,700 hidden in a book in my room. "What's this?" she demanded, holding up the envelope of cash. "Have you been stealing?" "No, I earned it, for the law program." Her face turned cold. "I told you no. Clearly, you need to learn respect." She took my money, all of it, used it to buy herself a new designer handbag. That was the beginning of the end. Over the next few months, Catherine's campaign to put me in my place intensified. She threw out my law books, canceled my subscription to legal magazines, and told my teachers I was no longer interested in a law club. The final straw came 3 weeks before my junior year ended. I had secretly applied for a scholarship to a law-focused boarding school in Massachusetts. Against all odds, I got in with a full ride. The acceptance letter arrived while Catherine was hosting another of her parties. She opened it before I could get home. I walked into a nightmare. "How dare you?" she screamed, waving the letter in my face. "Going behind our backs? Trying to embarrass me? It's a full scholarship," I tried to explain. "You won't have to pay anything. You ungrateful little brat." She ripped the letter to shreds. "I've tried to teach you your place, but you just won't learn. Get out." "What?" "Pack your bags and get out of my house. If you think you're so special, so capable, then prove it. But you won't do it under my roof." I looked to Dad, who stood in the corner, his face ashen. "Dad, please." He couldn't meet my eyes. Maybe it's best if you stay with your Aunt Sarah for a while, until things calm down." Catherine smirked triumphantly. "You have 1 hour to pack. After that, I'm calling the police for trespassing." I packed what I could into my school backpack and a small duffel bag, some clothes, my mother's photo, and the law books I'd managed to hide. As I walked out the door, Catherine's voice followed me. "Remember this moment, Olivia. This is what failure feels like. You'll never amount to anything." I walked 6 miles to Aunt Sarah's house in the rain. She took me in without question, her eyes filling with tears when I told her what happened. Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, had never liked Catherine, but she'd kept her distance for Dad's sake. "You'll stay with me," she declared, "and you'll prove her wrong." That night, curled up in Aunt Sarah's guest room, I made a promise to myself. Catherine thought she was teaching me about failure, but she'd actually given me the greatest gift: freedom. Freedom from her toxic presence, freedom to pursue my dreams without her constant belittlement. I would become a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I would become the best. And someday, Catherine Morgan would regret the day she underestimated me. Life at Aunt Sarah's house was different from anything I had known before. Gone were the constant criticisms, the walking on eggshells, the suffocating pressure to be invisible. Instead, I found myself in a home where dreams were encouraged and hard work was celebrated. Aunt Sarah, a high school counselor, helped me plan my future. "You can't attend that boarding school now," she said one evening over dinner, but we'll find another way. She was right. With her help, I transferred to a different high school, one with a strong pre-law program. The next 2 years were a blur of advanced classes, debate team competitions, and part-time jobs. I worked at the local courthouse as a filing clerk after school, soaking in everything I could about the legal world. Dad called once, about a month after I left. His voice was hesitant, heavy with guilt. "Olivia, sweetheart, how are you?" "I'm fine, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. "How's Catherine?" He sighed. She thinks this is for the best. Maybe when things settle down." I cut him off. "Don't worry, Dad. I won't come back to complicate your life." That was our last real conversation. He sent birthday cards with small checks, which I never cashed, and generic Christmas wishes, but our relationship had been broken by his silence that night. My hard work paid off. I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Columbia University. Catherine's words echoed in my head as I delivered my graduation speech. "You'll never amount to anything." I used them as fuel. College was where I truly found myself. I double majored in business and political science, maintaining a perfect GPA, while working part-time at a law firm as a legal assistant. My professors noticed my dedication. One of them, Professor Hamilton, became my mentor. "You have something special, Olivia," she told me after class one day, "a fire that can't be taught." Through Professor Hamilton, I met Diana Chen, a founding partner at Chen & Associates, one of New York's most prestigious law firms. I interned there during my junior year, working harder than any other intern. I stayed late, came in early, and volunteered for the cases no one else wanted. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" Diana asked me one night, finding me still at my desk at 11 p.m. I told her my story, about Catherine, about being kicked out, about the promise I made to myself. Diana listened silently, then smiled. "How would you like to be part of our legal scholarship program for law school?" That scholarship changed everything. I got into Harvard Law School, graduating magna cum laude 3 years later. Diana offered me an associate position at Chen & Associates immediately after graduation. I threw myself into my career with the same intensity that had gotten me through college. While other associates complained about long hours, I thrived on them. Every difficult case, every challenging client was an opportunity to prove Catherine wrong. My reputation grew quickly. I became known for taking on impossible cases and winning them. The legal community started calling me the closer, because once I took a case, it was as good as won. At 30, I made partner, the youngest in the firm's history. At 32, I became managing partner when Diana decided to semi-retire. The day I took over the corner office, I found a letter from Diana on the desk. "Olivia, I'm not just giving you this position because you're brilliant, though you are. I'm giving it to you because you understand that law isn't just about winning cases. It's about justice. Your past didn't break you. It made you stronger. Use that strength wisely." Diana. I built Chen & Associates into something even bigger. We expanded from corporate law into civil rights cases, taking on pro bono work for people who, like my teenage self, needed someone to fight for them. My name became associated with the biggest cases in New York. If you had a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that needed winning, I was the lawyer you wanted. Life had a strange sense of irony, though. One morning, my assistant knocked on my office door, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Mitchell, there's a potential client here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting. It's about the Morgan Realty Group case. I froze. Morgan Realty Group. Catherine's company. The same company that had been in the news recently for a $20 million lawsuit involving fraudulent property valuations. Send her in, I said, turning my chair to face the window. I heard the door open, heard the familiar click of expensive heels on hardwood floors. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 12 years. I need to speak with whoever's in charge, off Olivia? I turned slowly, savoring the shock on Catherine's face. She had aged, though she fought it with expensive procedures and designer clothes. But her eyes were the same, cold, calculating, now wide with disbelief. "Hello, Catherine," I said calmly. "I understand you need a lawyer." She stood frozen in my office doorway, her perfectly manicured hand clutching her designer bag, probably another one bought with someone else's dreams. You're the managing partner? Of Chen and Associates? I smiled, remembering the night she threw me out. "Please sit down. Tell me about your case." Catherine sank into the chair across from my desk, her composure cracking. "This is impossible. You were nothing. I was 16 and had nothing but a backpack of clothes and some law books," I finished for her. "Now I'm the person you need to save your company from a $20 million lawsuit. Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" Catherine sat in my office, her practiced poise crumbling as she realized the full magnitude of her situation. The $20 million lawsuit against Morgan Realty Group wasn't just any case. It was a career-ending, reputation-destroying disaster. "The accusations are false," she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "We never knowingly inflated property values." I opened the case file on my desk, scanning documents I had already memorized. 7 properties, Catherine. All sold to elderly clients at grossly inflated prices. The evidence suggests you knew exactly what you were doing. She leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "You have to help me. Your father?" "Don't." My voice cut through the air like steel. "Don't you dare use him to manipulate me. Not after what you did." Catherine's face hardened. "I did you a favor that night. Made you strong. Look at you now, managing partner at Chen and Associates. You should thank me." I let out a cold laugh. "Thank you? For throwing out a 16-year-old girl? For stealing her savings? For crushing her dreams at every opportunity?" "I was teaching you about the real world," she argued. "Nobody gives you anything. You have to take it." "No, Catherine. You were being cruel because you could be. Because it made you feel powerful to break someone else's spirit." I stood up, walking to the window overlooking Manhattan. "But you were right about one thing. Nobody gave me anything. I earned every bit of this success." She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Will you take the case?" I turned back to face her. The great Catherine Morgan, begging for help from the worthless teenager she kicked out. "How desperate are you?" "I'll pay whatever you want," she said quickly. "Double your usual fees. Triple them." "It's not about money." I sat back down, folding my hands on my desk. "Tell me about my father. How is he?" Her expression flickered. "James. He's fine. Working. Teaching history at a private school now." "And does he know you're here?" "No," she admitted. "He doesn't know about any of this. The lawsuit, the company's troubles. I've kept it from him." I nodded slowly. "Because if he knew, he might finally see you for what you are." Catherine's facade cracked completely. "Please, Olivia, I'll lose everything. The company, the house, our reputation. All of it gone if you don't help me." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. one I've been keeping for years. Did you know I've been tracking Morgan Realty Group since I made partner? Every questionable deal, every suspicious transaction. I knew someday our paths would cross again. Her face went pale. You've been waiting for this. Not actively, I corrected her. I've been busy building my own success. But I kept an eye on you, knowing that people like you eventually self-destruct. I stood up, walking to my office door. I won't take your case, Catherine, but I will give you some free legal advice. Settle. Take responsibility for what you did. Because if this goes to trial, I'll make sure every detail of your fraud becomes public record. You can't do this, she whispered. I'm family. Family? I turned back to her, my voice sharp. Family doesn't throw a teenager out into the rain. Family doesn't steal their savings or crush their dreams. You made it very clear 12 years ago that we weren't family. Catherine rose shakily, clutching her designer bag like a shield. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me beg? No, I said honestly. I don't enjoy seeing anyone in despair, not even you. That's the difference between us, Catherine. You found pleasure in causing pain. I found purpose in overcoming it. As she reached the door, I called out one last time. Catherine? She turned, tears smearing her expensive mascara. Tell my father I miss him. Tell him when he's ready to talk. Really talk. He knows where to find me. After she left, I sat in my quiet office, thinking about that rainy night 12 years ago, about the scared teenager with a backpack full of dreams and a heart full of determination. I picked up my phone and called Aunt Sarah. How did it go? She asked. She was the only person I'd told about Catherine's upcoming visit. Exactly as it needed to, I replied. She's going to settle the lawsuit. Probably lose the company anyway, but at least her clients will get their money back. And how do you feel? I thought about it. Free. Like I've finally closed a case that's been open for 12 years. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. The handwriting was familiar. My father's neat teacher's script. Dear Olivia, Catherine told me everything. About the lawsuit, about coming to see you, about what really happened the night you left. I've been a coward. I chose peace over justice, comfort over doing what was right. I let her drive away my daughter, and I'll never forgive myself for that. I saw your name in the paper recently, the youngest managing partner in Chen and Associates history. I've kept every article about your successes, every mention of your cases. I was too ashamed to reach out, but I've been proud of you every single day. If you're willing, I'd like to have coffee. Just talk. Start somewhere. Love, Dad. I sat at my desk, reading the letter 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and dialed his number. Dad? Yes, it's Olivia. I got your letter. Coffee sounds good. Life has a way of coming full circle. Sometimes the longest journey leads you right back where you started, but as a different person. Catherine had tried to teach me about failure, but instead, she taught me about strength, about resilience, about the power of proving someone wrong. 2 months later, I got another visitor in my office, a teenage girl from our pro bono program. She'd been kicked out of her home, was living with a relative, dreaming of becoming a lawyer despite everyone telling her she couldn't. I looked at her and saw myself 12 years ago. Tell me your story, I said, leaning forward. And then let me tell you about how being underestimated can be the greatest gift someone can give you. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone regret their actions. It's about becoming so successful that their opinion no longer matters. It's about turning their cruelty into your motivation, their rejection into your determination. Catherine lost her company in the end. The settlement wiped out most of her assets. She and my father divorced shortly after. He finally saw her for who she really was. Last I heard, she was working as a regular real estate agent in Connecticut, no longer the queen of luxury properties. As for me, I dedicated a portion of Chen and Associates' resources to helping underprivileged students pursue legal careers. We started a scholarship program specifically for teenagers who, like me, had all the determination, but none of the support. Every time I interview a candidate for our program, I think about Catherine's words, "You'll never amount to anything." She was wrong. I amounted to everything I dreamed of and more, not because of her cruelty, but in spite of it. And now, I make sure other dreamers get the chance to prove their doubters wrong too. Sometimes when I stand in my corner office, looking out over the city, I remember that scared 16-year-old walking in the rain. I wish I could tell her that everything would be okay, that one day she'd be stronger than she ever imagined. But then again, maybe she already knew. Maybe that's why she kept walking, kept dreaming, kept fighting. Because sometimes the people who tell you you'll never succeed are the ones who end up needing your help the most. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in revenge, but in becoming exactly who you were meant to be, regardless of who tried to stop you. The day I discovered what true betrayal felt like, I was sitting at our mahogany dining table, surrounded by college acceptance letters. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. Their prestigious letterheads scattered before me like fallen leaves. My hands trembled as I held the latest one from Princeton, their words of congratulation blurring through my tears. "Mom, Dad, I got in. I got into Princeton." My voice echoed through our sprawling Victorian home, a house that had witnessed 3 generations of the Montgomery family's success. My mother's heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she approached, her face bearing an expression I couldn't quite read. Behind her, my father's heavy footsteps followed, his usual confident stride somehow hesitant. "That's wonderful, Catherine," my mother said, but her tone carried none of the excitement I'd expected. She exchanged a glance with my father, who cleared his throat and loosened his silk tie. "Sit down, Kathy. We need to talk." I sank back into my chair, the acceptance letter still clutched in my hands. Something in their demeanor made my stomach twist into knots. "Your brother, William," my father began, "his tech startup is showing incredible promise. The prototype he's developed could revolutionize renewable energy storage." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "But he needs significant funding to take it to the next level." My mother stepped forward, her manicured fingers trailing along the table's edge. "We've decided to invest in his company. It's a remarkable opportunity, one that could secure the family's future for generations." "That's great," I said, though uncertainty crept into my voice. "But what about my college tuition? The fund you've been saving since I was born?" The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. "Catherine," my father said firmly, using my full name. "Never a good sign. We've made the decision to use your college fund to support William's venture. It's what's best for the family." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What?" "But that was my money. You promised." "Don't be selfish, Catherine," my mother cut in sharply. "William's project could be worth millions. You can take out student loans like other people do, or maybe consider a local community college for a few years." I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who had always preached about the importance of education, who had spent years encouraging my dreams of attending an Ivy League school. Now they stood before me, calmly destroying those dreams to favor my brother. Again. William had always been their golden child. 4 years older than me, he dropped out of college to pursue his entrepreneurial dreams, while I spent my high school years maintaining a perfect GPA, serving as class president, and winning national science competitions. William bounced from one failed startup to another, each time convincing our parents to invest just a little more. "How much?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What?" my father frowned. "How much of my college fund did you give him?" My mother shifted uncomfortably. "All of it. The full $289,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $300,000 gone. Every birthday check from grandparents, every summer job earning, every penny saved for my future, handed over to William without a second thought." I stood up so abruptly my chair toppled backward. "Did you even consider asking me? It's my money." "Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery," my father's voice boomed through the dining room. "That is enough. This decision is final. William's project needs this investment, and as part of this family, you need to support what's best for everyone." "Best for everyone?" I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "Or best for William?" "Your brother has vision," my mother said defensively. "He sees opportunities others can't. Sometimes that means taking risks. Risks with my future." I shouted, surprising even myself with the volume. "What about my vision? My opportunities?" My father's face hardened. "If you can't understand the importance of supporting your family's interests, perhaps you're not as mature as we thought. Go to your room until you can discuss this rationally." I stood there, 18 years old, being sent to my room like a child for daring to object to having my future stolen. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A fundamental change in how I saw my family, my place in it, and what I needed to do next. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs to my room, but instead of collapsing on my bed to cry, as they probably expected, I pulled out my largest backpack and began to pack. Essential clothes, my laptop, the emergency credit card I'd never used, and most importantly, my documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport. My hands moved methodically, my mind surprisingly clear despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. From my sock drawer, I retrieved the $200 I'd saved from my last tutoring sessions. Money I hadn't added to my college fund because I'd planned to use it for Princeton merchandise once I got in. Now it would serve a different purpose. As I packed, memories flooded through my mind. William's first failed startup, a social media platform for pets that burned through $50,000 our parents' money. His second attempt, a cryptocurrency that lasted 3 months before collapsing. Each failure met with encouragement, support, and more funding, while I was told to be practical about my dreams. The sound of the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through my window, I saw William's Tesla pulling into the driveway. Of course he was here, probably coming to collect his latest handout. I could hear their voices drifting up from below. William's charismatic laugh, my mother's adoring tone, my father's proud rumble. The perfect family moment, complete with their perfect son and his perfect excuses for needing more money. Opening my laptop one last time, I wrote 2 emails. The first to Princeton. Dear Admissions Committee, with deep regret, I must decline your offer of admission. Due to unexpected financial circumstances, I will be unable to attend Princeton University this fall. Thank you for the opportunity. Sincerely, Catherine Montgomery. The second email went to my parents. Mom and Dad, you've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Don't look for me. Don't try to contact me. I'll find my own way without the family money or the family name. Catherine. I hit send, then removed the battery from my phone. From downstairs, I could hear William launching into another enthusiastic pitch about his revolutionary technology. In his world of dreams and schemes, $289,000 was probably just another number, just another stepping stone to his imagined success. But for me, it was the last straw. Slinging my backpack over my shoulder, I took one final look at my room, at the debate team trophies, the science fair medals, the honor roll certificates, all evidence of a life spent trying to earn the approval of parents who would always choose William first. I climbed down the trellis outside my window, something I hadn't done since I was 14. My feet hit the ground softly, and without looking back, I walked away from the Montgomery family estate. In my pocket was $200. In my head was a lifetime of straight A's and academic achievements. And in my heart was a burning determination to prove that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. I didn't know then that 10 years later, I would be sitting across from them in a corporate boardroom, watching them pitch their failing company to potential investors, not realizing that their last hope for salvation was the daughter they had dismissed so easily. But that part of the story would come later. First, I had to build something from nothing. First, I had to become someone they would never expect their practical daughter to be. With each step away from my childhood home, my resolve strengthened. They wanted to bet everything on William. Fine. I would bet everything on myself. And I wouldn't need their $289,000 to do it. The first night of freedom tasted like cheap coffee and desperation. I sat in a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Boston, my backpack tucked securely under my feet, watching my phone battery slowly die. Before it went dark completely, I saw 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and 1 text from William. "Don't be dramatic, Kathy. Come home." I ordered another coffee, spreading my remaining cash on the laminate table. $178.42. The bus ticket from Connecticut had taken a bigger bite than expected. "More coffee, hun?" The waitress, Maria, had kind eyes and wore a name tag with 5 gold stars. "Thanks," I said, then hesitated. "Are you hiring?" She looked me over. Pristine college interview clothes, expensive laptop, the obvious signs of a privileged kid playing runaway. But something in my expression must have touched her because she didn't immediately dismiss me. "Kitchen help," she said finally. 6 to 2, minimum wage plus tip split. Start tomorrow if you want. I nodded, relief flooding through me. "I'll be here." "There's a motel down the street," she added, scribbling on her order pad. "Tell Jimmy that Maria sent you. He'll give you the weekly rate." That night, in a motel room that smelled of old cigarettes and cleaning supplies, I opened my laptop and began to plan. The Princeton acceptance letter was still in my bag, a reminder of the future I'd just lost. But as I stared at it, an idea began to form. I'd spent my high school years tutoring rich kids in advanced mathematics and sciences. Their parents paid premium rates for my services because I got results: perfect SAT scores, improved GPAs, early college admissions. I'd always seen it as a way to earn extra money for college. Now, I saw it as the foundation for something bigger. Opening a new document, I began to type: Elite Academic Consulting Specialized Tutoring and College Admissions Guidance founded by a Princeton-accepted scholar. I worked through the night, building a simple website using my coding skills from AP Computer Science. By dawn, I had created professional-looking business cards at an all-night print shop, spending $50 of my precious savings. The next 6 months fell into a grueling routine. From 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I worked at the diner, learning every aspect of the business I could. Maria, it turned out, had owned the place for 20 years. She taught me about inventory management, staff scheduling, and most importantly, how to read people. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., I built my tutoring business. My first client came from a regular at the diner who overheard me helping Maria's daughter with calculus during my break. Word spread quickly among the wealthy suburbs of Boston. There was a young tutor who had gotten into Princeton, but chose to defer, who could explain complex concepts clearly, who guaranteed results. I never mentioned my real last name. Catherine Montgomery became Kate Morgan, and my clients never questioned it. They cared about results, not pedigree. By month 3, I was making enough from tutoring to quit the diner, though I still helped Maria with her books on weekends. She'd become something between a friend and a mentor, teaching me lessons about business that no Ivy League school could match. "You're good with numbers," she said one Sunday, watching me optimize her inventory system. "But you're better with people. That's where real money is made." She was right. My tutoring clients weren't just paying for academic help. They were paying for confidence, for hope, for a chance at the future their children dreamed of. It was something I understood intimately. One day, as I was reviewing a student's college essay, his mother made an offhand comment that would change everything. "If only you could clone yourself. Every parent in Boston would hire you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Clone myself? No, but I could scale. I reached out to other high-achieving students who had gotten into top colleges but chose to take gap years. Many were brilliant, but needed money, just like me. I offered them a proposition: work under my brand, use my methods, and earn 70% of the fees while I handled marketing and client acquisition. Within 2 months, Elite Academic Consulting had 10 tutors. Within 6 months, we had offices in Boston, New York, and Greenwich, Connecticut, though I carefully avoided any locations too close to my family's social circle. My first million came faster than I expected, earned through a combination of the tutoring business and strategic investments in tech stocks. I lived modestly, pouring every spare dollar into expansion. While William was probably still burning through my college fund on his latest venture, I was building something sustainable. But I knew tutoring was just the beginning. Through my wealthy clients, I began to hear whispers about investment opportunities, startups seeking funding, established companies looking for fresh perspectives. I listened, learned, and most importantly, I planned. The breakthrough came during a tutoring session with Emma Chen, daughter of tech mogul James Chen. As I helped her with advanced economics, I noticed the investment prospectus for his company, Chen Tech Solutions, lying open on his home office desk. "Dad's worried," Emma confided during our study break. "The new energy storage project is failing, but he's invested too much to back out now." Energy storage, just like William's supposed revolutionary technology. I spent that night researching Chen Tech's project, and by morning, I knew 2 things. First, their approach was fundamentally flawed, and second, I knew how to fix it. It took 3 weeks to get a meeting with James Chen, using every connection I'd built through my tutoring network. When I finally sat across from him in his corner office, he looked amused. "Miss Morgan," he said, "my daughter speaks highly of you. But what makes you think you understand energy storage technology?" I opened my laptop and began my presentation. 4 hours later, He wasn't smiling anymore. Instead, he was offering me a partnership. 30% stake, he said, if you can deliver what you're promising. I countered with 40% and full control of the technical development. He agreed. 6 months later, Chintech's new energy storage system was revolutionizing the industry. The technology that William had dreamed of creating, I had actually built, though under a different name and with a different company. My net worth jumped to 9 figures overnight. But I wasn't done. Using Chintech's success as a springboard, I began acquiring struggling tech companies, particularly in the energy sector. Each acquisition was done through shell companies and holding firms, always keeping the name Catherine Morgan separate from the growing business empire. I hired the best lawyers and accountants to create a labyrinth of corporations that all led back to Morgan Enterprises, my private holding company. To the outside world, Morgan Enterprises was run by a reclusive CEO who never gave interviews or appeared in public. Years passed. My empire grew. I moved from Boston to New York to Silicon Valley, always staying ahead of any chance encounters with my family. Through discreet sources, I kept tabs on them. William's string of failures continued, each one funded by my parents' dwindling resources. The Montgomery family fortune, built over generations, was being bowled dry by their blind faith in their son. Then one morning in my San Francisco penthouse office, my assistant brought me interesting news. Montgomery Technologies is looking for investors, she said, placing the report on my desk. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Your father is meeting with potential buyers next week. I picked up the report, a smile playing at my lips. After 10 years, everything had come full circle. Schedule a meeting, I said, but use the Morgan Enterprises letterhead. Let's see if they recognize the daughter they threw away. It was time to show my family exactly what their practical daughter had become. The Montgomery Technologies building hadn't changed much in 10 years. The same pretentious granite facade, the same gold lettering above the entrance, the same security guard who never looked up from his crossword puzzle. But now, walking through the revolving doors in my Armani suit, I was no longer the teenage girl they had dismissed so easily. Miss Morgan? A young assistant hurried forward. The board is waiting in the main conference room. May I take your coat? I handed her my coat, suppressing a smile. My mother had always insisted that true power dressed in designer labels. Today, I wore enough worth of clothing to fund one of William's failed startups. Coffee? The assistant asked. Green tea, I replied, remembering how my mother used to mock my preference for tea over coffee. Proper brewing time, no sugar. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me time to center myself. 10 years of preparation had led to this moment. Through my network of shell companies and discrete investments, I had systematically acquired Montgomery Technologies' debt, positioned myself as their only viable lifeline, and now held their fate in my hands. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene that almost made me laugh. My father, Robert Montgomery, sat at the head of the table, though that position would soon be mine. My mother, Elizabeth, perched beside him, her perfect posture betraying her anxiety. And William, my dear brother who had burned through my college fund and much of the family fortune, slouched in his chair, tapping away at his phone. Miss Morgan, my father stood, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. We've heard remarkable things about Morgan Enterprises. I shook his hand firmly, noting the slight tremor in his grip. The great Robert Montgomery was nervous. Good. Please, I gestured for him to sit. Let's discuss why we're here. For the next hour, I listened as they presented Montgomery Technology's current situation. The company needed a $50 million cash injection just to stay afloat. Their stock had plummeted 70% in the last quarter. And William's latest venture, another attempt at revolutionary energy storage technology, had drained their remaining reserves. "We believe with proper investment," my father continued, his voice carrying that same persuasive tone he'd used when telling me to be practical about my dreams, Montgomery Technologies could return to its former glory. I opened my laptop, displaying a series of graphs on the conference room screen. "Your company's decline began approximately 10 years ago," I said, watching their faces carefully, coinciding with a series of interesting investment decisions. William shifted uncomfortably. My mother's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the table. "We took some calculated risks," my father defended. "Calculated?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like investing $289,000 in an unproven energy storage concept." The room fell silent. That specific number, the exact amount of my stolen college fund, hung in the air like an accusation. "How did you?" William started, then caught himself. I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "Tell me, Mr. Montgomery, what would you say was your biggest mistake in business?" My father cleared his throat. "Perhaps expanding too quickly in certain markets." "No," I cut him off, turning to face them. "Your biggest mistake was sitting in this room 10 years ago, thinking she would just accept your decision and fade into the background." The color drained from my mother's face. William's phone clattered to the table. My father's expression froze in dawning recognition. "Catherine?" I smiled, savoring the moment. "Hello, Dad. Mom. William. It's been a while." "This is impossible," William sputtered. You're Catherine Morgan?" "Actually, it's Catherine Montgomery Morgan now, legally changed." I sat back down, enjoying their shocked expressions. "But you'd know that if you'd bothered to look for me these past 10 years. My mother found her voice first. "Darling, we tried to find you." "No," I cut her off. "You half-heartedly called around for a few weeks, then decided I was being dramatic and would come home when I ran out of money." I looked at William. "How did that energy storage technology work out, by the way? The one you needed my college fund for?" He flushed red. "There were unexpected complications." "Funny," I interrupted again, pulling up another presentation. "Because Morgan Enterprises' subsidiary, Tech Solutions, seems to have solved those complications quite successfully." I displayed the schematics of the energy storage system I'd helped develop, the one that had made me my first billion. My father's business instincts finally kicked in. You own Tech?" "Among other things." I began listing companies on the screen. Tech Solutions, Elite Academic Consulting, Morgan Global Ventures, and as of last month, approximately 40% of Montgomery Technology's outstanding debt. The room spun into chaos. William jumped up, knocking over his chair. My mother pressed her hands to her face. My father just stared, his empire crumbling before his eyes. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why not just tell us who you were?" I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "Because you needed to see me as you truly are, not as parents facing their daughter, but as failing business people facing someone more successful than they ever imagined I could be." "What do you want?" William demanded. "Revenge?" I laughed. "Revenge? Brother dear, if I wanted revenge, I would have bought this company 6 months ago and fired you all immediately." I stood, straightening my suit. No. What I want is to fix what you broke. What does that mean? My mother asked quietly. It means I'm offering to save Montgomery Technologies. Full debt restructuring, capital injection, and technological partnership with Tech Solutions. I paused, letting that sink in. But there are conditions. My father's business mask slipped back into place. What conditions? First, William is out. No more positions, no more investment in his ventures, no more draining company resources. William started to protest, but my father silenced him with a look. Second, you and Mom retire, Dad. The company needs new leadership, not nostalgic devotion to failed strategies. And third? My mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. Third, I smiled, you all admit that sending me away was the best thing you ever did for me. Because everything I built without the Montgomery name, without the family connections, and without your money. Silence fell over the room. My father looked at the empire I'd built, displayed on the screen behind me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether from pride or regret, I couldn't tell. William slumped in his chair, finally confronting the reality that his younger sister had achieved everything he'd failed to do. Do we have a deal? I asked, knowing the answer before they spoke. My father nodded slowly. We do, Miss Morgan. Good. I gathered my things, preparing to leave. The papers will be drawn up by tomorrow. Oh, and Mom. I paused at the door. The local community college you suggested. They're one of my charitable foundation's biggest beneficiaries now. Turns out practical decisions can lead to extraordinary results. I walked out of the conference room, out of the building that had once represented everything I couldn't have, and into the waiting car where Maria, my first boss, now my company's chief operating officer, waited. How did it go? She asked, handing me a perfectly brewed green tea. Exactly as planned, I replied, taking a sip. Though I think I'll keep the diner story out of the official company history. She laughed. Are you sure about this? Saving their company after everything they did. I looked back at the Montgomery Technologies building, thinking about the scared 18-year-old girl who had left home with just $200 and a determination to prove herself. You know what I learned in that diner, Maria? Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something so much greater that they're forced to acknowledge their own mistakes. And did they? I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he realized who I was, of my mother's tears, of William's final defeat. They will. Every time they see the new company letterhead, Montgomery Morgan Technologies. You're keeping the Montgomery name. Of course, I said, opening my laptop to check the markets. After all, I did promise to support the family business. I just did it my way. As we drove through the city, past the skyscrapers and offices that had once seemed so far out of reach, I thought about that acceptance letter to Princeton, still preserved in my office. I had framed it alongside my first business license, my first $1 million contract, and a simple name tag that read Kate, server, from a certain 24-hour diner. Sometimes the best future isn't the one that's planned for you, but the one you build for yourself. $1 at a time. One dream at a time. One victory at a time. And sometimes, just sometimes, $200 and an unwavering belief in yourself is worth more than all the family fortunes in the world. The day my father died, I was in his office reviewing quarterly projections for Sterling Innovation's new medical device division. Numbers had always been my sanctuary, clean, precise, unchangeable. Unlike people, spreadsheets never lied or played favorites. Mr. Sterling wants to see the Q3 estimates, his secretary Martha said, poking her head in. She'd been calling him Mr. Sterling instead of your father since my first day at the company. Professionalism, she'd explained, was everything. Almost done, I replied, double-checking my calculations. The medical division was my baby, a project I'd spent 3 years developing. The projections looked promising, a 40% growth rate, conservative estimates showing potential revenue of $50 million by year's end. I never got to show him those numbers. The heart attack hit during his afternoon tennis match. By the time I reached the hospital, Sarah had already arrived, designer heels clicking against sterile tiles as she paced the waiting room. My sister always did have perfect timing. Finally decided to show up. She snapped, barely glancing at me. "Where were you?" "Working," I said quietly. "At the office, where you haven't been in months." She waved her hand dismissively. "Some of us have lives outside that dusty building, Madison." That dusty building was Sterling Innovations' headquarters, the company our grandfather had founded and our father had built into a billion-dollar enterprise. Sarah treated it like a trust fund, showing up for board meetings and important client dinners, but leaving the actual work to others, mainly to me. The doctor's arrival cut short our brewing argument. His expression told us everything before he spoke a word. "I'm very sorry," he began, and the world tilted sideways. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence calls, and board meetings. I handled most of it, working through my grief the only way I knew how, by keeping busy. Sarah spent her time entertaining relatives and giving tearful interviews to business magazines about carrying on our father's legacy. The will reading was scheduled for a week after the funeral. I sat in our family lawyer's office, the same leather chair I'd occupied during countless childhood visits with Dad. Mr. Patterson, who'd handled Sterling legal affairs for 30 years, looked uncomfortable as he shuffled his papers. "As you know," he began, "your father updated his will recently, just 2 months ago, in fact." I nodded. Dad had mentioned wanting to get his affairs in order, though he'd seemed healthy as ever. "The bulk of his personal estate will be divided equally between you both," Mr. Patterson continued. "The house, investments, art collection, all split 50-50. Sarah smiled, probably already mentally redecorating the Manhattan penthouse. However, the lawyer cleared his throat regarding Sterling Innovations. My heart stopped. Dad and I had discussed this. Just last month, we talked about my 5-year plan for the company over dinner. He'd seemed excited about my vision for expanding the medical division, even proud. Control of the company, including the position of CEO and chairperson of the board, will pass to Sarah Sterling. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah's triumphant gasp barely registered through the roaring in my ears. "There must be some mistake," I managed. "Dad and we had plans. The medical division is specifically addressed." Mr. Patterson cut in gently. "Your father left instructions that all current projects should be reviewed by the new CEO for viability." Sarah's smile turned predatory. "Don't worry, little sister. I'll give your pet project all the attention it deserves." I sat there numb as Mr. Patterson continued reading. The details washed over me. Voting shares, board positions, corporate structure. All I could think about was Dad's voice during our last dinner. "The medical division could change lives, Madison. It's exactly the kind of innovation Sterling needs." Had it all been lies? The next morning, I arrived at the office early. As usual, my security badge still worked, though I wondered how long that would last. The medical division team was waiting for my morning briefing. 15 brilliant engineers and researchers who trusted my vision. I heard about the will reading, Martha said softly as I passed her desk. I'm so sorry, Madison. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Martha. Has she arrived yet? 3rd floor. Moving into the executive office already. Of course she was. Sarah never wasted time claiming what she thought was hers. I made it through the briefing somehow, focusing on technical details and development timelines. My team knew something was wrong, but they were kind enough not to ask. These people had followed me, believed in me. What would happen to them now? The answer came sooner than expected. Madison. Sarah's voice cut through the quiet hum of the engineering floor. She stood in the doorway of our research lab, looking absurdly out of place in her camel suit. We need to talk. I followed her to what had been Dad's office. She'd already replaced his degrees and family photos with modern art pieces. His old leather chair, worn from years of late nights and important decisions, was gone, replaced by something sleek and strong. I've been reviewing the numbers, she said, perching on her new throne. The medical division is hemorrhaging money. It's a development phase, I explained, fighting to keep my voice steady. The projections show whatever you want them to show. She tossed a folder onto the desk, my carefully prepared reports. This isn't what Sterling Innovations needs right now. We're streamlining operations, focusing on our core business. Core business? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad always said innovation was our core business. It's literally in our name. Dad isn't here anymore. Sarah's voice turned cold, and frankly, neither should you be. I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face. What are you saying? I'm saying you're fired, Madison. Clear out your office by the end of the day. Security will escort you out. The world seemed to stop. You can't do this. I built that division from nothing. Those people trust me. Those people, she cut in, work for Sterling Innovations, my company now. And you? She smiled, the same smile she'd used when stealing my toys as children. You're worthless to this company. Always have been, really. Playing with your little projects while I learned how business really works. By partying with board members and kissing up to investors. I shot back. When's the last time you actually developed anything? Development is for employees, she said dismissively. Leadership is about vision, and my vision doesn't include you. I stood there, hands shaking, as decades of competition and resentment crystallized into this moment. Dad believed in me, I said quietly. Dad pitied you, Sarah replied. Why do you think he left me in charge? Now get out of my office before I call security. I walked out with my head high, past Martha's tearful face, past my confused team members, past the security guard who'd known me since I was a child. One box of personal items, family photos, engineering awards, the prototype of my first patented device. A life's work reduced to a cardboard box. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A message from an unknown number. Meet me at Joe's Diner tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone. There's something you need to know about your father's safe. I stared at the message, wondering if grief was making me hallucinate. Dad's safe. The old one in his home office? Sarah would have cleaned that out already, along with everything else. But what did I have to lose? Little did I know, that message would change everything. But first, I had to survive the longest night of my life, alone with the knowledge that I'd lost not just my father, but my life's work and my last connection to the company he built. I drove home in a daze, the box of memories beside me, feeling both too heavy and too light. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions. For now, all I could do was wonder, what secret could be worth all this pain? Joe's Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Pine, a relic from a time before sterling innovations dominated the city skyline. Dad used to bring me here for chocolate milkshakes after school, before board meetings became more important than father-daughter time. I arrived early, sliding into a worn leather booth with a clear view of both entrances. Old habits die hard. Dad always said a good executive watches their exits. At exactly 3 p.m., Martha walked in. "You?" I straightened in surprise. "Dad's secretary." "No, Sarah's secretary now." Looked different outside the office. More determined, less deferential. "Your father knew this day might come," she said, sitting across from me. "He made me promise to wait until the right moment." "What moment?" She pulled an envelope from her bag. "The moment your sister showed her true colors." Inside the envelope was a single key and a handwritten note in Dad's familiar scrawl. "West Wall, behind the Monet. December 14, 1989. Dad's old safe. I breathed. But Sarah must have opened it already. Martha smiled. "That's what she thinks. Your father had 2 safes in his study. The obvious one, behind his desk, that's where he kept standard documents, things he expected people to find. But the real safe, his private safe." She tapped the key. "Only 3 people knew about it. Him, me, and now you." "Why you?" "Because I've been more than just a secretary for 30 years, Madison. I was your father's most trusted confidant. I knew things about sterling innovations that even the board doesn't know." My mind raced. December 14, 1989. Why was that date familiar? The day Sterling Innovations went public, Martha supplied, reading my expression. Also the day your mother left. The memory hit hard. I was 6, Sarah 10. Mom walked out during Dad's IPO celebration, leaving nothing but a note and a lifetime of trust issues. "What's in the safe?" "I don't know," Martha admitted. "But your father said if anything happened to him, if Sarah ever tried to push you out, I should make sure you found it." She glanced at her watch. "Sarah's in board meetings all afternoon. The house will be empty." I gripped the key tightly. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I watched you grow up in that company. While Sarah was partying through college, you were interning in the labs. When she was dating board members' sons, you were filing patents. You are your father's daughter, Madison, his true heir." She stood up. "The company needs you. More than anyone knows." 20 minutes later, I let myself into my childhood home. Everything felt different, colder somehow, as if Sarah's presence had already begun erasing decades of memories. The study was exactly as Dad had left it, probably the only room Sarah hadn't changed yet. The Monet, an original, worth millions, hung innocently on the west wall. With trembling fingers, I lifted it. There, almost invisible against the wood paneling, was a seam. The key fit perfectly. Inside the wall safe were 3 items: a thick manila envelope, a USB drive, and a smaller envelope with Sarah's name on it. I opened the manila envelope first. Inside was a detailed report from a private investigator, dated 6 months ago. My hands shook as I read. Subject: Sarah Sterling investigation confirms systematic embezzlement from Sterling Innovations Medical Research Fund. Estimated total, $28.7 million. Funds traced to offshore accounts and real estate purchases under alias Jennifer Blake. Photos spilled out. Sarah meeting with shady lawyers. Documents showing money transfers. Property deeds in the Cayman Islands. The USB drive contained something even more damaging. Video recordings of Sarah selling Sterling trade secrets to competitors. She'd been sabotaging the company from within for years. But it was the letter with her name that explained everything. Dad's final message to his eldest daughter. Sarah, by the time you read this, you'll think you've won. The company will be yours, just as you always wanted. You'll believe I chose you over Madison. You're wrong. I've known about the embezzlement for months. The traded secrets, the offshore accounts. All of it. I gave you chances to come clean, to prove you could change. You failed every test. The will you think gives you control? It's a trap. The real transfer of power was executed months ago. Everything, the voting shares, operational control, even my board seat, was legally transferred to Madison through a series of blind trusts. Your CEO in name only. The moment you open this safe, those trusts activate. Madison becomes majority shareholder and true CEO of Sterling Innovations. I loved you, Sarah, but I had to protect the company. More importantly, I had to protect your sister from you. The choice is yours now. Resign quietly, return the stolen funds, or face criminal charges. Madison will know what to do. Dad. My phone buzzed. A text from Martha. The board meeting just ended. Sarah's headed to the house. I quickly photographed everything, then replaced it exactly as I'd found it. The front door opened just as I rehung the monet. What are you doing here? Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. I turned slowly, saying goodbye to Dad's office, since you'll probably redecorate this room too. Get out before I call the police. I walked past her, pausing in the doorway. You should check Dad's safe, by the way. The real one, behind the monet. Interesting reading material. Her face paled. What are you talking about? Ask Martha for the key. Or better yet, ask her about December 14, 1989. I smiled. Goodbye, Sarah. See you at tomorrow's board meeting. I heard her heels clicking frantically across the floor as I left, knowing she'd find exactly what Dad wanted her to find. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for Sterling Innovations' head of security. Jack. Madison Sterling. I need you to lock down all company servers immediately. Authorization code Victor Echo 9. And put a hold on any transfers from our research accounts. Yes, Miss Sterling, he replied without hesitation. Dad's loyal people were still in place, just as he planned. Next, I called our family lawyer. Mr. Patterson, it's time to execute the Phoenix Protocol. Are you sure? He asked. Once we activate those trusts, there's no going back. I thought about Sarah's face when she fired me, about the years of sabotage, about Dad's final act of protection. I'm sure. My sister needs to learn that some safes hold more than just secrets. They hold justice. Tomorrow would bring chaos, board meetings, legal challenges, perhaps even criminal charges. But for now, I smiled, knowing Dad had outplayed us all. The medical division would survive. Sterling Innovations would thrive. And Sarah? She was about to learn what Dad always taught me. In business, as in life, the truth will always come out. All it takes is the right key, the right safe, and the right moment. The Sterling Innovations boardroom had always reminded me of a gladiator arena. 24 stories up, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city our family had helped build, and a massive oval table where corporate warriors fought their battles. I arrived early, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of gold. Martha had already prepared the room, folders at each seat, coffee service arranged precisely, blinds adjusted to minimize glare. The little details that made big moments work. Security reports Sarah arrived at 5 a.m., Martha said, setting a cup of green tea at my usual spot. She's been in her office making calls all morning. I nodded, picturing my sister's desperation. Any transfers get through? No. The accounts are frozen, just as you ordered. Though she tried, 17 attempts to move funds offshore since midnight. And the board members? All confirmed attending, including Thomas Y. That was crucial. Thomas Y., our largest independent shareholder, had been Sarah's strongest supporter. His vote could swing the entire board. By 8:55 a.m., they began filing in. Board members, legal counsel, even a few shareholders who'd earned the right to attend. Many double-took at my presence, but no one dared comment. The tension in the room could have powered the building. Sarah arrived last, naturally. She'd changed clothes since yesterday. Armani power suit, killer heels, war paint perfect. But her eyes gave her away. They darted around the room like a cornered animal's, finally fixing on me with pure hatred. "What is she doing here?" she demanded. "Waiting for you to begin the meeting," I replied calmly. "There are some interesting items on today's agenda. You're not on the board anymore. Security." "Actually," Mr. Patterson spoke up from his corner, "Ms. Madison Sterling's presence is required for today's proceedings." He began distributing additional folders. "If everyone could please review the documents before you." Sarah snatched her copy, face growing paler with each page she turned. The room filled with murmurs as others did the same. "This is impossible," she finally spluttered. "These trusts, they can't be legal." "Oh, but they are," I said, standing. "Every transfer, every document, every signature verified and notarized. Dad was very thorough." "Dad was dying," she snapped. "He wasn't thinking clearly." "Actually," Martha stepped forward, "Mr. Sterling began planning this 18 months ago when he first suspected the embezzlement." The room went dead silent. "What embezzlement?" Thomas Y. asked sharply. I nodded to Martha, who activated the presentation screen. Evidence began filling the display. Bank transfers, property records, emails between Sarah and our competitors. $28 million, I announced to the stunned room. Stolen from our medical research division. Our father's private investigation confirmed it all. Lies. Sarah slammed her hands on the table. This is a desperate attempt to what, Sarah? To protect the company? To stop you from selling our trade secrets? I pulled out my phone. Should I play the videos Dad collected? The ones showing you meeting with our competitors? She lunged for the phone, but security was faster. 2 guards materialized beside her, firm but professional. "Miss Sterling," the head of security addressed Sarah. "We need you to remain seated." "This is my company," she shrieked. "I am the CEO." "No," I said quietly. "You're not. You never were. The will was a test. Dad's final chance for you to prove you could change. Instead, you showed exactly why he couldn't trust you with his legacy." Thomas Way stood up. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Sarah Sterling's leadership. Seconded, another board member quickly added. You can't do this. Sarah's voice cracked. Daddy gave me the company. Dad gave you a choice. I corrected. Return the stolen funds and resign quietly, or face criminal charges. Time to choose, sister. She looked around the room, finding no allies in the faces surrounding her. All these people she charmed and manipulated over the years. Now they saw her true nature. Fine, she spat. You want the money back. Take it. But don't think this means you've won. I'll fight this in court. You'll what? I interrupted. Reveal how you embezzled millions? How you sold company secrets? How you fired the legitimate CEO hours after Dad's funeral? I shook my head. Think carefully about your next move, Sarah. Prison jumpsuits come in designer orange these days. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. There is another option. One your father prepared. He slid a document across the table. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. A full confession in exchange for immunity from prosecution, I explained. Sign it, return every penny you stole, and you can walk away. Keep a small trust fund, even. Enough to live comfortably, if not extravagantly. And if I refuse, then I'd press charges. The evidence goes to the SEC, the FBI, and every news outlet in the country. The great Sarah Sterling, brought down by her own greed. Tears smeared her perfect makeup as she stared at the document. For a moment, I saw past the designer armor to the sister I'd once admired, once loved. Was any of it real? I asked softly. Did you ever actually care about the company? About Dad's legacy? I cared about winning, she whispered. That's what Dad taught us, wasn't it? Win at all costs? No, I shook my head. That's what you chose to learn. Dad taught us to innovate, to build, to make things better. You just couldn't see past your own reflection. She picked up the pen, hand trembling slightly. You think you're so perfect, have you? Daddy's real hair? The true Sterling? No, Sarah. I just think I'm the sister who didn't betray everything our family built. The scratch of her signature echoed in the silent room. As soon as she finished, security stepped forward. Please escort Ms. Sarah Sterling from the building, I instructed. Her credentials have already been deactivated. She stood, straightening her designer jacket one last time. Congratulations, little sister. You finally won. This was never about winning, Sarah. It was about protecting what Dad created, what we were supposed to protect together. As the doors closed behind her, Thomas Weiss spoke up. I moved to formally recognize Madison Sterling as CEO and chairperson of Sterling Innovations, effective immediately. The vote was unanimous. Hours later, after the press releases were drafted, the employees notified, and the initial shockwaves had subsided, I stood in Dad's old office, my office now. Martha brought in a box I'd requested from storage. Are you sure about this? She asked as I pulled out the old leather chair, Dad's chair, the one Sarah had discarded. Some things shouldn't change, I said, running my hand over the worn leather. Some legacies deserve to be preserved. I sat down, feeling the weight of responsibility settle around me. On the desk, Dad's old photo still stood, all of us together, before Mom left, before Sarah's ambition poisoned everything, before money and power tore our family apart. Your father would be proud, Martha said softly. He knew, didn't he? All along, he knew it would end this way. She smiled. He knew his daughters, both of them. the one who saw the company as a prize to be won, and the one who saw it as a responsibility to be earned. I picked up the medical division reports. My division, the one Sarah had tried to destroy. The numbers still looked promising. With the stolen funds returned, we could accelerate development, help more people, build something truly meaningful. Martha, I called as she turned to leave. Thank you for everything. Just doing my job, Miss Sterling. Madison, I corrected. After 30 years of keeping my father's secrets, I think you've earned first-name privileges. She nodded, eyes glistening slightly. Welcome home, Madison. That evening, I worked late, just as Dad used to. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing a life, a story, a potential customer or employee or partner. Sterling Innovations didn't belong to Sarah or me. It belonged to all of them. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, you'll regret this. Family should come first. I typed back, it did. That's why Dad chose me. Then I blocked her number, turned back to my work, and began planning the future of Sterling Innovations. Not as the sister who won, but as the daughter who understood what winning really meant. Sometimes a safe holds more than secrets. Sometimes it holds the truth about who we really are. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice comes with a key, a note, and a father's final lesson about love, trust, and the true meaning of family legacy.